The impossible left fingerprints. Silent relics preserve flawless secrets that refuse every accepted rule, as though intelligence itself once followed unfamiliar rhythms. Each astonishing find quietly erases another boundary between certainty and illusion. Continue carefully. The next discovery refuses permission to remain merely imaginable, ever again. Across the quiet deserts of present-day Uzbekistan, a perfect circle rises from the earth like the faded imprint of a forgotten design. Krylgan Kala does not resemble the ruined cities that usually define the ancient world. Its thick mud-brick walls form a striking ring around a central structure, while the remains of defensive towers still watch over an empty landscape. Even after centuries of erosion, the monument seems deliberate, almost mathematical, as though every angle and distance once carried a purpose beyond survival. Most historians believe Krylgan Kala was built around the 4th century BC by the people of ancient Khwarezm, a prosperous kingdom that flourished along the lower Amu Darya River. Archaeological excavations have uncovered pottery, coins, sculptures, and burial chambers, revealing a society with advanced craftsmanship and strong cultural connections to neighboring civilizations. Evidence suggests the complex served several roles over time, functioning as both a fortified structure and an important ceremonial site. Human burials discovered within the complex indicate that ritual and remembrance were deeply woven into its history. Yet, the architecture continues to raise difficult questions. Unlike most fortresses of its era, Krylgan Kala follows an unusually precise circular plan. The design has encouraged researchers to ask whether its builders intended more than military defense. Some archaeologists have suggested the monument may also have served as an astronomical observatory. Certain features appear to align with the movement of the sun during important seasonal events, leading to the possibility that ceremonies were synchronized with the heavens. Ancient Khwarezm possessed considerable astronomical knowledge, making such an idea plausible, though far from proven. Other interpretations move into less certain territory. Some independent researchers believe the site's geometry reflects forgotten sacred principles shared across distant civilizations. Circular monuments appear in many parts of the ancient world, often connected with ritual activity and celestial observation. Could these similarities represent independent discoveries or traces of knowledge exchanged over surprisingly vast distances? The available evidence offers no definitive answer. The central tower adds another layer of uncertainty. Although only fragments remain, it may once have risen high above the surrounding walls. Was it simply a watchtower, a ceremonial sanctuary, or a place where priests observed the changing sky? No surviving text explains its original purpose, leaving every reconstruction incomplete. Today, wind sweeps through abandoned chambers where ceremonies, conversations, and quiet moments disappeared long ago. Each excavation reveals another fragment of the story, yet the monument refuses to surrender its full meaning. Krylgan Kala remains suspended between archaeology and mystery, inviting a simple but enduring question: how much of its original purpose still lies hidden beneath the desert floor? If Krylgan Kala leaves us wondering whether ancient architecture once reflected a deeper understanding of ritual and the heavens, our next destination carries those questions into an even quieter landscape. Not far from the ancient heartland of Khwarezm, another lonely monument rises above the desert, one that has watched centuries pass in almost complete silence. Perched atop a rocky hill overlooking the plains of present-day Uzbekistan, the Chilpik Tower commands attention long before its details become visible. Its circular walls, weathered by relentless wind and sun, stand against the horizon like the remains of an unfinished crown. From a distance, the structure appears almost timeless, detached from the world below. The climb toward it is gradual, and with every step, the surrounding landscape grows wider, emptier, and somehow more reflective. Unlike many ancient monuments, Chilpik Tower was never intended to impress with elaborate decoration. Its power comes from its simplicity. Thick mud brick walls form a broad circular enclosure, nearly 50 meters in diameter, enclosing an open space whose original purpose continues to invite discussion. Little survives inside today, yet the monument's commanding position suggests that visibility itself was an essential part of its design. Most historians identify Chilpik as a dakma, often called a Tower of Silence, associated with the ancient Zoroastrian tradition. Dating roughly between the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD, the structure is believed to have served as a place where the dead were exposed to the elements and scavenging birds. Within Zoroastrian belief, earth, fire, and water were considered sacred, and burying or cremating bodies risked contaminating these pure elements. Elevating the deceased upon isolated stone platforms offered a different path, one intended to preserve both spiritual and natural order. Archaeological evidence and historical accounts strongly support this interpretation. Similar structures have been identified elsewhere across regions influenced by Zoroastrian traditions, though few occupy such a dramatic natural setting. Even so, many details surrounding Chilpik remain uncertain. Its location raises immediate questions. Why was this particular hill chosen? Was visibility alone sufficient, or did the builders recognize symbolic qualities in the landscape itself? From the summit, the surrounding plains stretch toward distant horizons, while the changing light transforms the monument throughout the day. Sunrise and sunset cast long shadows across the circular walls, giving the impression that the structure participates in rhythms much older than human memory. Some researchers have suggested that Chilpik's placement may have carried astronomical significance. Although no definitive evidence confirms intentional celestial alignments, elevated ritual sites often encouraged careful observation of seasonal cycles. Could ceremonies have been timed according to the movement of the sun or stars? Or was the commanding view simply a practical necessity for sacred rites? Beyond academic discussion, more speculative ideas continue to circulate. Some independent writers have proposed that monuments like Chilpik preserve fragments of forgotten ceremonial knowledge passed between distant cultures. Others believe its unusual isolation hints at purposes extending beyond funerary practice, perhaps serving as a place of initiation, meditation, or observation. These interpretations remain unverified, supported more by symbolism than by archaeological evidence, yet they persist because the monument offers so few definitive answers. Centuries later, Chilpik still dominates the landscape with remarkable quietness. Its walls no longer witness the ceremonies they once sheltered, yet they continue to provoke reflection. Standing alone above the desert, suspended between confirmed history and unanswered possibility, the tower invites an enduring question. Was its purpose fully understood by those who built it, or has part of its true meaning disappeared alongside the civilization that left it behind? As the winds fade around the lonely walls of Chilpik Tower, another silent landscape begins to emerge, one far to the east, where rolling hills conceal the faint outlines of an ancient settlement. Unlike monuments that rise dramatically above the horizon, this place almost disappears into the earth itself. Yet, beneath its quiet surface lies evidence of a society whose achievements continue to reshape what we thought we knew about the earliest chapters of civilization. The Houchengzui Site, located in China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, appears unassuming at first glance. Low earthen embankments blend into the surrounding terrain, while scattered traces of ancient walls hint at a settlement that once stretched across the landscape. Time has softened nearly every feature, leaving only subtle patterns visible to those willing to look closely. But archaeology often begins with such quiet details, where the smallest discoveries reveal the largest stories. Excavations have shown that Houchengzui dates back roughly 4,300 years, placing it during the late Neolithic period, around 2300 BC. This was an era of profound transformation across northern China, when scattered farming communities were gradually evolving into larger, more organized societies. Rather than isolated villages, researchers uncovered evidence of carefully planned construction, defensive walls, residential districts, and signs of coordinated labor on an impressive scale. These discoveries challenge long-held assumptions about how complex societies emerged in the region. For many years, scholars believed that advanced urban development appeared primarily within the fertile valleys farther south. Houchengzui suggests a far more diverse picture. Here, on the northern frontier, communities were already experimenting with large-scale planning, engineering, and social organization long before many expected. Among the most striking features are the massive earthen fortifications surrounding parts of the settlement. Building walls of this size required not only manpower, but also leadership capable of organizing hundreds, perhaps thousands, of workers. Such projects imply sophisticated administration, shared beliefs, or common threats powerful enough to unite entire populations. Yet, the reasons behind these enormous efforts remain uncertain. Who were the people who lived here? What challenges shaped their decisions? Were they defending themselves from rival communities, protecting valuable resources, or expressing political authority through monumental construction? Archaeological evidence points toward a thriving settlement supported by agriculture, animal husbandry, and regional exchange networks. Pottery, stone tools, and architectural remains reveal skilled craftsmanship and daily life that was far more organized than once imagined. At the same time, the site's strategic location suggests it may have connected different cultural traditions moving across northern China, serving as a meeting point between agricultural societies and mobile pastoral groups. Still, several questions remain unanswered. The overall layout displays an unexpected degree of planning. Residential areas, defensive features, and public spaces appear deliberately arranged rather than developing through random expansion. Was this the product of gradual growth guided by practical needs, or evidence of centralized planning directed by an emerging ruling class? The archaeological record offers clues but no final certainty. Some researchers believe Houchengzui represents an important step in the gradual evolution of early urban centers, illustrating how independent communities developed increasingly complex forms of governance. Others argue that the settlement reflects a broader network of interaction, where ideas, technologies, and social structures spread across vast distances through trade and migration. Neither explanation excludes the other, and both continue to shape ongoing research. Beyond mainstream archaeology, more speculative interpretations occasionally surface. The precision of the settlement's organization has led some independent researchers to wonder whether forgotten systems of measurement or planning existed long before written records became common. Others point to similarities between large prehistoric settlements across different regions of Eurasia, suggesting the possibility of cultural connections that remain only partially understood. Such ideas remain hypothetical, supported more by intriguing patterns than definitive evidence. Yet, they continue to inspire discussion precisely because so much of the prehistoric world remains undocumented. The landscape itself adds to the mystery. Seasons transform the surrounding plains, covering ancient foundations beneath grasses, snow, and drifting soil. Much of the settlement still lies buried, untouched, beneath layers accumulated over thousands of years. Every excavation exposes only a small window into a far larger story, while countless structures remain hidden below the surface. Standing at Houchengzui today, it becomes remarkably easy to imagine an active settlement, where voices once echoed between newly built walls, smoke rose from countless homes, and decisions were made that shaped generations to come. Yet, despite decades of research, the full identity of its builders, the extent of their influence, and the reasons for the settlement's eventual decline remain only partially understood. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what archaeologists have uncovered here, but how much still waits beneath the earth, preserving chapters of human history that have yet to be read. From the buried streets of Houchengzui, where traces of an early organized society still lie hidden beneath the soil, our journey returns to the deserts of Central Asia. Here, another ancient city rises from an otherwise empty landscape, a place where towering walls, royal halls, and remarkable works of art hint at a civilization that flourished with surprising sophistication, only to fade into silence. This is Toprak Kala, one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites of ancient Khwarezm. Standing amid the broad plains of present-day Uzbekistan, Toprak Kala appears almost unreal against the desert horizon. Massive mud-brick walls, some still reaching impressive heights, surround the remains of what was once a thriving royal city. Time has worn away roofs and upper stories, but the overall plan remains strikingly clear. Streets, courtyards, temples, and palaces can still be traced across the landscape, offering an unusually complete glimpse into an ancient urban center. Unlike many ruined cities that survive only as scattered foundations, Toprak Kala preserves enough of its original layout to reveal the ambitions of its builders. The city is believed to have served as the capital of the kingdom of Khwarezm during the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. Protected by formidable defensive walls and carefully organized districts, it reflected both political authority and architectural confidence. Excavations carried out during the 20th century uncovered remarkable discoveries. Archaeologists revealed an enormous palace complex containing richly decorated ceremonial halls, elaborate wall paintings, carved wooden sculptures, and finely crafted clay statues. Some rooms appear to have been designed for royal audiences, while others may have served administrative or religious functions. These findings transformed modern understanding of Khwarezm, demonstrating that the kingdom possessed a level of artistic and governmental sophistication equal to many better-known civilizations of the ancient world. Yet, despite these discoveries, Toprak Kala continues to guard many unanswered questions. One of its most fascinating features is the palace itself. Rising above the surrounding city, it dominated both the skyline and daily life. Within its walls were chambers decorated with vivid murals depicting nobles, warriors, musicians, and ceremonial processions. The surviving artwork reveals extraordinary technical skill, but much of its symbolism remains uncertain. Were these scenes historical records, religious narratives, royal propaganda, or expressions of beliefs now completely forgotten? Equally intriguing is the city's careful organization. Residential quarters, storage areas, ceremonial buildings, and defensive structures appear arranged according to a coherent plan rather than developing gradually over centuries. Such planning suggests a highly organized government capable of directing large construction projects and maintaining complex administrative systems. But how extensive was that authority? Did it govern only the surrounding region, or did its influence extend much farther across Central Asia? Toprak Kala also occupied an important position along networks that connected east and west. Merchants, diplomats, and travelers likely passed through the region, bringing not only goods but also ideas, technologies, and artistic traditions. Archaeological evidence reflects this cultural exchange, with influences from Persian, Central Asian, and neighboring civilizations visible throughout the city's architecture and decorative art. The city seems to have stood at the meeting point of multiple worlds, quietly absorbing and reshaping outside influences. Some researchers believe this cultural diversity helps explain the city's unusual artistic achievements. Others suggest that many aspects of Khwarezm's development occurred independently, representing a distinct civilization whose contributions have often been overshadowed by larger empires nearby. Beyond mainstream scholarship, more speculative theories occasionally emerge. The sophistication of Toprak Kala has led some independent researchers to question whether far more of ancient Khwarezm remains undiscovered beneath the surrounding desert. They point to satellite imagery revealing faint geometric patterns extending beyond the visible ruins, wondering whether hidden districts, ceremonial complexes, or forgotten infrastructure still lie buried beneath centuries of drifting sand. While these ideas remain unconfirmed, ongoing archaeological surveys continue to identify previously unknown structures across the region, reminding us that the visible city may represent only part of a much larger landscape. Others focus on the palace murals and sculptures, proposing that certain symbols preserve fragments of mythologies whose meanings disappeared long ago. Without surviving written explanations, many artistic details remain open to interpretation. What messages were intended for those who stood within these ceremonial halls? How much of their symbolic language has been permanently lost? Today, silence fills corridors once occupied by kings, officials, artisans, and priests. Sunlight moves slowly across weathered walls that have endured nearly 2,000 years of desert winds, while buried rooms still wait beneath layers of earth. Every excavation expands our understanding of Toprak Kala, yet each discovery also reveals how much remains unknown. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not why this magnificent city declined, but how many chapters of its story still rest beneath the desert, waiting for the moment when they finally return to the light. As Toprak Kala slowly disappears behind us, its silent palace leaving countless questions unanswered, another remarkable site draws our attention farther south. This time, the mystery is not preserved in towering walls or forgotten streets, but in treasures hidden beneath a modest hill for nearly 2,000 years. Their discovery revealed extraordinary beauty, remarkable craftsmanship, and a civilization whose identity still invites careful investigation. This is Tillya Tepe, the Hill of Gold. At first glance, Tillya Tepe appears almost ordinary. Located in present-day northern Afghanistan, the low mound blends naturally into the surrounding landscape, giving little indication of what rested beneath its surface. For centuries, wind and dust concealed its secret, until archaeological excavations in 1978 uncovered one of the most astonishing collections of ancient artifacts ever found in Central Asia. Hidden within 6 burial chambers lay more than 20,000 objects crafted primarily from gold, alongside silver, ivory, gemstones, glass, and finely worked ornaments. Delicate crowns, necklaces, rings, belt buckles, weapons, embroidered garments decorated with golden plaques, and miniature sculptures emerged from the earth almost untouched. The sheer quantity of precious objects transformed Tillya Tepe into one of archaeology's greatest discoveries, earning the collection its enduring nickname, the Bactrian Gold. Most scholars date the burials to the 1st century BC, or the 1st century AD, a period when Central Asia stood at the crossroads of powerful civilizations. The region connected trade routes stretching from China through Persia and into the Mediterranean world. Merchants carried silk, spices, metals, artistic traditions, and religious ideas across these vast networks, creating an environment where cultures constantly influenced one another. The treasures of Tillya Tepe reflect exactly that kind of cultural exchange. Greek-inspired figures appear beside motifs associated with Persia. Steppe nomadic traditions blend with Indian artistic influences, while decorative elements hint at contacts extending across thousands of kilometers. Rather than representing a single isolated culture, The collection reveals a world where identities overlapped, adapted, and evolved through centuries of interaction. Yet, one question has never been fully resolved. Who were the individuals buried here? The graves contained both men and women, each accompanied by extraordinary wealth. Some researchers believe they belonged to a noble family connected to the Yuezhi tribes, whose descendants eventually established the Kushan Empire. Others suggest they represented local rulers governing an important frontier region where multiple traditions converged. The available evidence supports several possibilities, but none provides absolute certainty. Even the famous golden crown discovered in one burial reflects this uncertainty. Unlike rigid ceremonial crowns, it was ingeniously designed to fold flat for travel. Such practical engineering strongly suggests a society accustomed to movement rather than permanent palaces. Was its owner a queen of a settled kingdom, or the leader of an elite nomadic people whose wealth traveled with them across vast landscapes? The symbolism woven into the artifacts deepens the mystery. Dragons, winged creatures, flowers, celestial imagery, and mythological beings appear repeatedly throughout the collection. Some designs resemble familiar traditions from neighboring civilizations, while others remain unique. Were these merely decorative choices, or did they express beliefs now lost to history? Without written explanations, every interpretation remains necessarily incomplete. Beyond mainstream scholarship, more speculative ideas occasionally emerge. Some independent researchers argue that Tillya Tepe preserves evidence of an advanced cultural network extending far beyond what conventional history has reconstructed. They point to the remarkable blending of artistic traditions as possible proof that ancient communication across Eurasia was even more extensive than currently understood. Others wonder whether undiscovered royal cemeteries still lie hidden nearby, suggesting that the 6 known burials represent only a small part of a much larger ceremonial complex. These possibilities remain unverified, yet they continue to attract attention because the archaeological record itself feels unusually rich. The craftsmanship displayed in even the smallest ornaments demonstrates extraordinary technical ability, raising questions about the workshops, artisans, and patrons responsible for producing such masterpieces. Where were these objects created? Were they imported through trade, crafted locally, or produced by traveling artisans serving elite families across Central Asia? The story of Tillya Tepe gained another remarkable chapter during the political upheavals of the late 20th century. For years, many feared the treasures had disappeared forever amid conflict and instability. Yet they survived, hidden away in secure vaults until they could once again be revealed to the world. Their survival only strengthened their reputation as one of archaeology's most extraordinary collections. Today, the hill itself remains quiet, offering few clues to the wealth it concealed for centuries. Beneath its modest appearance, Tillya Tepe continues to challenge familiar ideas about identity, trade, power, and cultural exchange in the ancient world. And if one unassuming mound could preserve such an astonishing legacy, it leaves an irresistible question lingering in the silence. How many more forgotten hills still guard stories that have yet to reshape our understanding of the past? From the golden treasures of Tillya Tepe, our journey returns once more to the vast deserts of ancient Khwarezm. Here, the mystery is measured not in delicate ornaments or royal burials, but in towering fortresses that still dominate the landscape after nearly 2,000 years. Rising above the barren plains, Ayaz Kala stands as a silent reminder that even the strongest walls cannot fully preserve the stories they were built to protect. Perched on the edge of the Kizilkum Desert in present-day Uzbekistan, Ayaz Kala overlooks an immense expanse of sand, rock, and distant horizons. From afar, its towering mud-brick walls seem to grow naturally from the ridge itself, blending into the reddish earth while remaining unmistakably artificial. Even today, the fortress projects an overwhelming sense of isolation. There are no bustling cities nearby, no rivers flowing beneath its walls, only open desert stretching in nearly every direction. The name Ayaz Kala refers not to a single fortress, but to a complex of 3 separate fortifications built at different periods. Together, they reflect centuries of adaptation, defense, and settlement in one of Central Asia's most demanding environments. Archaeological evidence suggests that the earliest fortress, known as Ayaz Kala I, was constructed around the 4th century BC during the flourishing kingdom of Khwarezm. Later, fortresses expanded the complex, revealing how successive generations continued to recognize the strategic importance of this remarkable location. The first fortress remains the most imposing. Massive defensive walls, reinforced by rows of towers and narrow passageways, surround a large interior that once sheltered soldiers, supplies, and perhaps nearby communities during times of conflict. Ingenious architectural features allowed defenders to monitor approaching enemies while limiting vulnerable points of entry. Even after centuries of erosion, these defenses continue to demonstrate an impressive understanding of military engineering. Yet, practical explanations alone do not answer every question. Why was such an enormous fortress built in a landscape that appears so empty today? Ancient climate conditions were somewhat different, with agricultural settlements and irrigation systems extending farther into the region than they do now. Even so, constructing walls of this scale demanded extraordinary resources, careful planning, and long-term organization. What threat justified such an investment? Was the fortress intended primarily to defend fertile lands, protect important trade routes, or symbolize the authority of Khwarezm's rulers? Archaeologists generally view Ayaz Kala as part of an extensive defensive network that guarded the kingdom's northern frontier. Similar fortresses are scattered across the region, suggesting a coordinated strategy rather than isolated construction. Together, these strongholds may have protected agricultural communities from raids by nomadic groups while securing valuable trade connections across Central Asia. At the same time, the location invites deeper reflection. Standing atop the fortress walls, the surrounding desert unfolds in every direction with remarkable clarity. The elevated ridge offers commanding views of the plains, making it ideal for observing movement across great distances. Some researchers have suggested that beyond military surveillance, such vantage points may also have supported communication between neighboring fortresses through signals using fire or smoke. Although direct archaeological evidence remains limited, the possibility reflects the sophistication of ancient defensive systems. More speculative interpretations move beyond strategy altogether. Some independent researchers have wondered whether Ayaz Kala's elevated position carried symbolic or ceremonial meaning in addition to its defensive purpose. Throughout history, high places have frequently been associated with authority, spirituality, and observation of the heavens. While no convincing evidence identifies Ayaz Kala as an astronomical site, its commanding relationship with the surrounding landscape continues to inspire questions. Could ceremonies once have accompanied military life within these walls? Might the fortress have represented not only protection, but also a visible expression of political and spiritual order? Others focus on the broader network of desert fortresses across Khwarezm, proposing that many remain undiscovered beneath shifting sands. Satellite surveys and ongoing archaeological investigations have indeed revealed additional ancient settlements throughout the region, reminding us that the visible ruins represent only part of a much larger historical landscape. Each newly identified site adds another piece to an increasingly complex picture of life along the desert frontier. As daylight fades across the Kizilkum Desert, long shadows stretch through abandoned gateways where guards once kept watch. Wind moves quietly between weathered towers, carrying little trace of the voices that once filled these walls. Ayaz Kala remains one of the finest surviving fortresses of ancient Central Asia, yet its greatest secrets may never have been written down. Whether viewed as a masterpiece of military engineering, a symbol of royal authority, or part of a forgotten network whose full extent has yet to be uncovered, it leaves us with a quiet and enduring thought. How many more chapters of this desert civilization still lie hidden beneath the sands, waiting for the moment they are finally revealed? As the desert fortresses of Ayaz Kala fade into the distance, the journey shifts thousands of kilometers westward, where the dry plains of Central Asia give way to the rolling landscapes of the Iberian Peninsula. The setting changes, but the questions remain remarkably familiar. Once again, ancient walls emerge from the earth, preserving the outlines of a society whose achievements seem unexpectedly advanced for its time. This time, the mystery leads to Vila Nova de São Pedro, one of prehistoric Europe's most intriguing fortified settlements. Hidden among the gentle hills of central Portugal, Vila Nova de São Pedro does not immediately reveal its significance. The landscape feels peaceful, marked by farmland, scattered trees, and quiet valleys. Yet beneath this calm setting lie the remains of a settlement that flourished thousands of years ago, during an era when human societies across Europe were undergoing profound transformation. What survives today is a network of stone walls, defensive enclosures, and archaeological layers that hint at a community far more organized than its surroundings might suggest. The settlement dates primarily between approximately 2600 BC and 1300 BC, spanning the late Neolithic and much of the Copper Age. During this period, communities throughout the Iberian Peninsula began experimenting with metallurgy, agriculture, long-distance trade, and increasingly complex social structures. Vila Nova de São Pedro became one of the most important centers of what archaeologists now call the Vila Nova culture, leaving behind evidence that challenges older ideas about prehistoric Europe. Excavations have revealed multiple concentric defensive walls, carefully planned entrances, towers, storage areas, and living spaces constructed over many generations. Rather than growing randomly, the settlement appears to have expanded through deliberate phases of rebuilding and reinforcement. Each new generation modified the existing fortifications, creating an architectural record that reflects centuries of adaptation. Why was such elaborate defense necessary? One possibility is that competition over valuable resources had intensified. Copper was becoming an increasingly important material, and nearby trade routes connected communities across the Iberian Peninsula and beyond. Archaeological discoveries suggest that Vila Nova de São Pedro participated in extensive exchange networks, receiving exotic materials while exporting locally produced goods. Such prosperity may have brought both opportunity and danger, making defensive construction an essential investment. Artifacts recovered from the site include finely crafted pottery, polished stone tools, copper objects, decorative ornaments, and evidence of specialized craftsmanship. These discoveries point toward a community with skilled artisans and organized production, rather than a simple farming village. The settlement appears to have balanced agriculture, trade, and emerging technologies with remarkable success. Yet, despite decades of excavation, many aspects of daily life remain uncertain. The repeated rebuilding of defensive walls raises intriguing questions. Were the inhabitants responding to repeated attacks, environmental pressures, or shifting political alliances? Or did the walls carry symbolic importance beyond military protection, expressing status, identity, or communal strength? Archaeology provides evidence for construction, but motives are often far more difficult to recover. Another enduring mystery surrounds the settlement's social organization. Constructing multiple stone fortifications required careful planning and sustained cooperation. Did a centralized leadership coordinate these ambitious projects, or were decisions made collectively by the community itself? The archaeological record offers hints of increasing social complexity, but stops short of revealing how authority was actually exercised. Some researchers also point to the site's strategic position within broader trade networks. Similar artifacts discovered across distant regions suggest that ideas, technologies, and cultural traditions traveled surprisingly long distances during the Copper Age. Vila Nova de São Pedro may have served as an important regional hub where merchants, craftspeople, and neighboring communities exchanged not only goods but also knowledge. If so, its influence may have extended far beyond the settlement's physical boundaries. Beyond mainstream archaeology, more speculative interpretations occasionally emerge. The settlement's concentric walls and carefully organized layout have prompted some independent researchers to suggest that geometry itself may have carried symbolic meaning. Others note similarities between fortified prehistoric settlements found across Europe, wondering whether they reflect independent development or the gradual spread of architectural traditions through extensive cultural contact. While no convincing evidence supports the idea of a single forgotten civilization linking these communities, the recurring patterns continue to inspire discussion. The site's long occupation adds another layer of mystery. For more than 1,000 years, generations rebuilt, modified, and expanded the settlement before it was eventually abandoned. The reasons remain uncertain. Environmental change, shifting trade routes, social transformation, or conflict have all been proposed, yet no single explanation fully accounts for its decline. Today, only fragments of those ancient walls remain visible above the Portuguese countryside. Grass now covers spaces where workshops, homes, and gathering places once stood, while countless artifacts still rest beneath the soil. Every excavation reveals another piece of an unexpectedly sophisticated prehistoric world, but the deeper story remains incomplete. Vila Nova de São Pedro reminds us that even in landscapes that appear familiar, entire civilizations can quietly disappear, leaving behind only stone, silence, and one lingering question. How many forgotten chapters of Europe's earliest societies are still waiting beneath the ground, untouched by time? As the stone walls of Vila Nova de São Pedro gradually disappear into the hills of Portugal, another forgotten complex emerges thousands of kilometers to the east. Once again, the landscape changes, but the questions remain strikingly familiar. Across the open steppes of southern Kazakhstan stands a monument unlike any other in Central Asia, a place built on a monumental scale, abandoned before its story was fully written, and still surrounded by uncertainty. Known as Akyrtas, it has challenged historians, archaeologists, and travelers for centuries, inviting each generation to ask the same question: what was this place truly meant to become? The first impression of Akyrtas is one of immense ambition. Massive blocks of deep red sandstone rise from the plain, their sharp edges weathered by more than 1,000 years of wind and seasonal extremes. Even in ruin, the structure feels unusually powerful. The stones themselves are enormous, some weighing several tons, carefully cut and transported across considerable distances before being assembled into walls of remarkable thickness. Unlike many ancient ruins softened by time, Akyrtas retains a geometric confidence that suggests careful planning from the very beginning. Located near the modern city of Taraz in southern Kazakhstan, the complex occupies an important position along one of history's greatest networks of cultural exchange, the Silk Road. For centuries, caravans carrying silk, spices, precious metals, manuscripts, and religious ideas crossed these vast landscapes, linking East Asia, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Akyrtas stood within this world of constant movement, where merchants, diplomats, pilgrims, and rulers regularly encountered one another. Yet, despite its strategic location, the purpose of Akyrtas remains surprisingly difficult to define. Most researchers believe construction began during the 8th century AD, although the exact date continues to be debated. Archaeological evidence points toward an ambitious architectural project that was never fully completed. The surviving foundations reveal a massive rectangular complex covering more than 4 hectares, enclosed by thick outer walls and organized around spacious courtyards and carefully planned interior chambers. Sophisticated water channels, reservoirs, and stone-lined conduits indicate that the builders invested considerable effort in supplying water to the site despite its relatively dry surroundings. Such engineering alone suggests extraordinary organizational ability. Transporting thousands of massive sandstone blocks, designing complex hydraulic systems, and coordinating large construction teams would have required substantial political authority and economic resources. Whoever ordered the construction of Akyrtas clearly envisioned something far beyond an ordinary settlement. But what exactly? One of the most widely accepted theories identifies Akyrtas as an unfinished palace commissioned during the Umayyad or early Abbasid period. Its monumental scale, symmetrical design, and carefully organized layout resemble royal complexes found elsewhere across parts of Central Asia and the Middle East. According to this interpretation, the project may have been abandoned because of political instability, changing leadership, or shifting regional priorities before construction reached completion. Another interpretation suggests that Akyrtas functioned as a caravanserai, a fortified stopping place where merchants traveling the Silk Road could rest, exchange goods, and replenish supplies. Its position near major trade routes certainly supports this possibility. The spacious courtyards could have accommodated animals and caravans, while surrounding rooms may have served as storage, workshops, or temporary lodging. Yet several aspects of the architecture complicate this explanation. The unusually thick walls, monumental entranceways, and carefully proportioned inner spaces seem more elaborate than many known caravanserais of comparable periods. Some chambers appear ceremonial rather than practical, leading researchers to wonder whether hospitality alone can explain the site's ambitious design. Others have proposed that Akyrtas served as a religious or administrative center, perhaps combining several functions within a single complex. Throughout history, important architectural projects often reflected multiple purposes simultaneously, acting as political headquarters, ceremonial spaces, economic centers, and symbols of authority. Akyrtas may represent precisely this kind of multifunctional complex, although the incomplete state of construction leaves many details impossible to confirm. One of the site's most fascinating features is its remarkable geometry. The builders employed consistent proportions throughout the plan, organizing courtyards, corridors, and chambers according to an orderly layout that still remains visible today. Even after centuries of collapse, visitors can easily recognize the precision underlying the original design. This has led some researchers to examine whether mathematical principles or symbolic concepts influence the architecture beyond simple practicality. Equally impressive is the sophisticated water management system. Channels carved into stone carried water from nearby springs into reservoirs and throughout the complex. In an environment where reliable water supplies determined the success of large settlements, such engineering represented both technical knowledge and long-term planning. The system also raises practical questions. If construction truly ended before completion, how much of this infrastructure was ever fully operational? Was the water network intended to support a palace, gardens, travelers, or an entirely different purpose? Beyond mainstream archaeological interpretations, Akyrtas has naturally attracted more speculative ideas. For generations, local traditions have associated the site with forgotten rulers, hidden chambers, and unusual phenomena. Some legends describe the complex as a place connected with powerful ancient leaders whose identities have faded into folklore. Others speak of unexplored underground passages extending beneath the visible ruins, although archaeological investigations have yet to confirm such extensive subterranean networks. Modern independent researchers have occasionally proposed more unconventional explanations. Some point to the monument's massive stone construction and unusually precise layout, suggesting that Akyrtas preserves architectural knowledge whose origins remain poorly understood. Others believe the site's orientation and proportions may reflect astronomical considerations, proposing that certain walls or entrances align with solar events or significant points on the horizon. While no conclusive archaeological evidence currently supports deliberate astronomical design, the careful geometry continues to encourage investigation. There are also those who wonder whether Akyrtas formed part of a much larger regional network of monumental complexes stretching across Central Asia. Similarities in construction techniques, urban planning, and hydraulic engineering have prompted discussions about the movement of architects, craftsmen, and engineering knowledge along the Silk Road. Rather than representing an isolated mystery, Akyrtas may illustrate how ideas traveled alongside merchants, gradually blending local traditions with distant influences. Excavations continue to add new pieces to the puzzle. Pottery fragments, construction materials, architectural details, and environmental studies have steadily improved our understanding of the site's chronology and development. At the same time, each new discovery seems to generate additional questions rather than final answers. Why was such an immense investment abandoned? Was construction halted suddenly or gradually? Did political conflict interrupt the project, or did economic priorities simply shift elsewhere? Even the surrounding landscape contributes to the atmosphere of uncertainty. The open steppe stretches endlessly beyond the red sandstone walls, creating a powerful sense of isolation despite the site's former connection to one of history's busiest trade corridors. Seasonal light transforms the ruins throughout the day, casting long shadows that emphasize the monument's immense scale while concealing details within its surviving chambers. It is easy to imagine caravans approaching from the horizon, seeing these enormous walls long before reaching their gates, wondering, as visitors still do today, what purpose such an extraordinary complex was meant to serve. Centuries have passed since the sound of stonecutters echoed across this plateau. The workers disappeared, the project stopped, and the intended future of Akyrtas was never fully realized. Yet the monument itself endures, preserving the outlines of an ambition that history only partially remembers. Every carefully placed block suggests confidence. Every unfinished section hints at interruption. And every excavation reminds us that the greatest mysteries are not always hidden beneath the ground. Sometimes they stand in plain sight, waiting for someone to understand why they were built at all, and whether the final answer still lies buried somewhere beneath the silent stones. As the immense red stones of Akyrtas slowly recede into memory, another monument comes into view, one far older, yet equally resistant to explanation. This time, the journey leads to the green countryside of northern England, where quiet fields conceal towering pillars of stone that have watched the landscape change for thousands of years. Unlike unfinished palaces or abandoned fortresses, these monoliths offer no walls, no chambers, and no inscriptions. They simply stand, silent and unwavering, as though waiting for questions that humanity has not yet learned how to answer. Known as the Devil's Arrows, these towering standing stones rise near the town of Boroughbridge in North Yorkshire. Today, only 3 remain, spaced across open farmland where wind moves gently through the grass and changing skies cast shifting shadows across their weathered surfaces. Yet, these surviving giants are only part of a much larger story. Historical records suggest that at least one additional stone once stood nearby before being destroyed centuries ago, and some researchers believe there may originally have been even more. Approaching the monument, the first impression is not merely its age, but its scale. The tallest surviving stone reaches more than 6.5 meters into the sky, making it one of the tallest prehistoric standing stones in Britain. Each monolith weighs many tons and was carved from millstone grit, a hard sandstone transported from quarries believed to be several kilometers away. For communities living more than 4,000 years ago, moving stones of this size would have required extraordinary planning, coordination, and determination. Most archaeologists date the Devil's Arrows to the late Neolithic or early Bronze Age, around 2500 BC to 2000 BC. This places them within one of the most remarkable periods of prehistoric Britain, an era that also witnessed the construction of monumental landscapes such as Stonehenge, Avebury, and countless stone circles, cursus monuments, and burial mounds. Across the British Isles, communities were reshaping their environment with astonishing ambition, raising enormous stones whose meanings continue to inspire debate. Unlike stone circles or enclosed ceremonial sites, however, the Devil's Arrows form a linear arrangement. The surviving stones stretch roughly north to south, with significant distances separating each pillar. This unusual layout has encouraged generations of researchers to ask a deceptively simple question: why build a line instead of a circle? One practical explanation suggests that the stones marked an important route across the landscape. In prehistoric Britain, monuments often served as landmarks visible from great distances, guiding movement between settlements, ceremonial centers, or seasonal gathering places. Standing prominently above the surrounding plains, the Devil's Arrows could have functioned as enduring markers within a carefully understood cultural landscape. Another possibility focuses on ritual rather than travel. Monumental alignments frequently carried ceremonial significance, defining sacred processions or symbolic pathways connecting important locations. The spacing between the stones may have shaped the experience of those moving through the landscape, encouraging observation, reflection, or participation in rituals whose details have long disappeared. Yet, the monument's precise purpose remains uncertain. Unlike later civilizations, the builders left no written records explaining why these enormous stones were erected. Everything archaeologists know comes from excavation, comparison with similar sites, environmental evidence, and the monument itself. The stones remain silent, offering no inscriptions, no carvings, and almost no direct clues regarding the beliefs of those who raised them. One of the most discussed possibilities involves astronomy. Several prehistoric monuments across Britain display alignments associated with the rising or setting sun during important points of the year. Some researchers have investigated whether the Devil's Arrows may reflect similar observations. The north-south orientation naturally invites examination, while nearby landscape features may once have influenced how celestial events appeared from the site. Although no widely accepted astronomical interpretation has emerged, the possibility continues to receive careful attention because so many prehistoric societies carefully observed the rhythms of the sky. Other archaeologists emphasize the monument's relationship with the surrounding landscape instead. Rivers, ancient trackways, and neighboring ceremonial sites suggest that the Devil's Arrows formed part of a much larger network of prehistoric activity extending across the region. Rather than standing alone, the stones may have functioned within an interconnected ceremonial landscape, whose full extent has been altered by thousands of years of agriculture and development. Centuries after their construction, the monument inspired stories that reveal how later generations struggled to explain these mysterious pillars. According to local folklore, the devil himself stood on a nearby hill and hurled enormous stones toward the neighboring town in an act of destruction. His aim failed, and the stones landed harmlessly where they remain today. The legend gave the monument its enduring name, reflecting a common pattern found across Britain, where ancient megaliths were often attributed to supernatural beings after their original purpose had been forgotten. These stories hold no archaeological authority, yet they reveal something important. When knowledge disappears, imagination naturally steps forward to fill the silence. Beyond folklore, more speculative interpretations have also emerged over the years. Some independent researchers argue that the Devil's Arrows formed part of an extensive prehistoric surveying system stretching across Britain, suggesting that ancient builders possessed unexpectedly sophisticated knowledge of geometry and long-distance planning. Others propose that standing stones acted as symbolic markers defining territories, ceremonial boundaries, or even networks connecting distant sacred sites. More unconventional ideas move further still, suggesting that certain megalithic monuments were deliberately positioned at locations associated with unusual geological or electromagnetic properties. Supporters of these theories point to recurring patterns among ancient monuments across Europe, proposing that prehistoric communities recognize natural features modern science has only partially explored. At present, however, no convincing archaeological evidence confirms such interpretations, and they remain speculative rather than established conclusions. Excavations around the Devil's Arrows have uncovered relatively little compared with more intensively studied monuments. This scarcity of evidence presents its own challenge. Were important clues destroyed through centuries of farming? Have associated wooden structures, pathways, or ceremonial features simply disappeared beneath the soil? Or does the monument's apparent simplicity conceal a significance that never depended upon material remains at all? The stones themselves continue to weather slowly under rain, frost, and changing seasons. Tiny fractures spread across their surfaces. Lichen gradually softens their appearance. Yet, despite thousands of years of exposure, they remain standing, preserving one of prehistoric Britain's most striking achievements. Perhaps their greatest mystery lies not in how they were built, remarkable though that accomplishment certainly was, but in why generations invested such immense effort into raising monuments that reveal almost nothing about themselves. They ask for patience instead of certainty. They encourage observation rather than explanation. And as evening light stretches across the Yorkshire fields, casting long shadows between the surviving pillars, one quiet thought lingers in the air. If these silent stones were only a small part of a much larger prehistoric landscape, how many of its missing pieces have already vanished, and how many are still waiting beneath the earth to complete a story that remains unfinished? As the towering stones of the Devil's Arrows fade into the mist of northern England, another ancient landscape begins to emerge, one separated by thousands of kilometers, yet connected by the same enduring questions. Once again, we encounter a place built long before written history, where ordinary fragments of daily life have become extraordinary windows into humanity's distant past. This time, the mystery is found not in towering monoliths, but beneath the quiet earth near one of China's oldest cultural heartlands. Here lies Banpo, a settlement that continues to reshape our understanding of prehistoric society while leaving many of its deepest secrets unresolved. At first glance, Banpo appears remarkably modest. The site rests on a broad plain near the city of Xi'an in Shanxi province, where gentle terrain stretches toward distant hills and seasonal rivers quietly shape the landscape. Nothing immediately suggests that this peaceful setting once supported a thriving community more than 6,000 years ago. Yet, beneath layers of soil, archaeologists uncovered one of the most complete Neolithic villages ever discovered, preserving an unusually detailed picture of life during one of humanity's earliest agricultural civilizations. Banpo dates to approximately 4,800 BC to 3,600 BC and belongs to the Yangshao culture, one of the most significant prehistoric cultures in northern China. Discovered in the 1950s during construction work, the site quickly transformed archaeological understanding of early settlement in East Asia. Unlike isolated artifacts or scattered ruins, Banpo revealed an entire community preserved with remarkable clarity. Houses, storage pits, pottery workshops, cemeteries, defensive features, and everyday tools survived together, allowing researchers to reconstruct aspects of prehistoric life rarely visible elsewhere. The settlement was carefully organized, circular and rectangular homes clustered around shared open spaces, while a broad ditch surrounded much of the village. Outside this enclosure lay pottery kilns, burial grounds, and specialized working areas. The arrangement immediately suggested planning rather than random expansion. Even 6,000 years ago, the people of Banpo were organizing space according to practical needs and communal priorities. Excavations uncovered thousands of artifacts that paint an increasingly vivid picture of daily life. Stone tools, bone needles, fishing hooks, grinding stones, spindle whorls, and beautifully painted pottery reveal a society that combined farming, hunting, fishing, weaving, and skilled craftsmanship. Millet appears to have been one of the community's primary crops, while domesticated pigs and dogs lived alongside the settlement. The nearby river likely provided fish and fresh water, helping sustain generations of inhabitants. Among the most celebrated discoveries are Banpo's painted ceramic vessels. Decorated with bold, geometric designs, fish motifs, human faces, and abstract symbols, these pots demonstrate artistic sophistication far beyond simple utility. Their balanced proportions and carefully applied pigments suggest that beauty held genuine importance alongside function. Yet, the meaning of many designs remains uncertain. Some scholars interpret the fish symbols as reflections of the community's dependence on nearby waterways. Others propose that the images carried spiritual or ceremonial significance, perhaps connected with fertility, seasonal cycles, or ancestral beliefs. Without written language to explain these motifs, every interpretation remains informed by evidence but ultimately incomplete. The layout of Banpo has generated equally fascinating discussions. One long-standing interpretation suggested that the settlement may have been organized around a matriarchal social structure. Early excavations noted differences between male and female burials, along with patterns in grave goods that some researchers believed reflected women's elevated social status. For decades, Banpo became widely known as a possible example of a prehistoric matriarchal society. Modern archaeology, however, approaches this idea more cautiously. New research suggests that burial practices alone cannot reliably reconstruct complex social systems. While women may indeed have occupied important positions within the community, the available evidence does not conclusively demonstrate a fully matriarchal society. Instead, Banpo reminds us how interpretations evolve as new discoveries emerge and older assumptions are re-examined. The defensive ditch surrounding the settlement introduces another layer of mystery. Measuring several meters wide, it clearly required considerable labor to construct. Was it primarily intended to protect against wild animals? Did it serve as a barrier against flooding? Or did it defend the village from neighboring communities competing for resources? Each possibility remains plausible, and the ditch may well have fulfilled multiple purposes throughout the settlement's long occupation. Equally intriguing is the apparent degree of cooperation visible throughout the site. Building homes, maintaining communal spaces, producing pottery, cultivating crops, and constructing large defensive features would have required sustained coordination among many families. What system of leadership made such cooperation possible? Were decisions guided by elders, religious figures, respected families, or collective agreement? The archaeological record preserves the results of their organization, but reveals little about the conversations and relationships that shaped it. Banpo also occupies an important place within the broader development of early Chinese civilization. The Yangshao culture extended across large areas of northern China, with numerous settlements sharing similar pottery styles, agricultural practices, and architectural traditions. This raises another enduring question. How closely connected were these communities? Did ideas spread gradually through trade and migration, or were they part of an increasingly organized cultural network that linked distant settlements over generations? Beyond mainstream archaeology, Banpo has naturally attracted more speculative interpretations. The recurring geometric patterns found on its pottery have prompted some independent researchers to wonder whether they represent symbolic systems whose meanings have been entirely forgotten. A few have suggested that certain repeated markings could reflect an early stage in the long evolution of written communication. Most specialists, however, caution that no convincing evidence currently identifies these designs as true writing. They are better understood as symbolic or artistic expressions rather than a developed script. Others focus on the settlement's remarkable organization, proposing that prehistoric communities possessed more sophisticated knowledge of planning than traditionally acknowledged. Rather than viewing Banpo as an isolated farming village, they argue that it may represent one surviving example of a much broader network of advanced Neolithic societies whose full complexity has yet to be uncovered. Ongoing discoveries across East Asia continue to reveal increasingly sophisticated settlements from similar periods, lending support to the broader idea that early agricultural societies were more capable and interconnected than once believed, even if many details remain uncertain. Despite decades of excavation, much of Banpo still lies beneath the ground. Archaeological investigations inevitably uncover only portions of ancient landscapes, leaving countless structures, artifacts, and environmental clues untouched for future generations. Advances in scientific analysis, from soil chemistry to ancient DNA and microscopic residue studies, continue to extract new information from materials recovered many years ago. Each technological breakthrough offers fresh perspectives on a settlement that continues to surprise researchers. Today, the voices of Banpo's inhabitants have long since faded, yet their presence remains remarkably tangible. Their homes, tools, artwork, and carefully planned communities still speak across 6 millennia with quiet confidence. They remind us that the foundations of organized society, artistic expression, and communal life were established far earlier than many once imagined. But they also leave us with a mystery that grows deeper the more we learn. How many other prehistoric communities, equally sophisticated yet still undiscovered, lie hidden beneath fields, forests, and modern cities, waiting patiently beneath the earth to reshape our understanding of humanity's earliest chapters once again? As the quiet stone circles of Mongolia gradually disappear into the endless grasslands, another ancient ceremonial landscape begins to emerge beyond the distant horizon. Once again, the clues are subtle. Earthworks, carefully placed stones, and fragments of forgotten rituals scattered across the hills. Yet, what archaeologists uncovered here has transformed our understanding of prehistoric East Asia. Long before the rise of the first recorded dynasties, an extraordinary ceremonial center was already taking shape. Its builders left behind monuments so sophisticated that they continue to challenge long-held assumptions about the origins of complex civilization. This place is known as Niuheliang. Hidden among the rolling hills of Liaoning province in northeastern China, Niuheliang blends almost seamlessly into the surrounding landscape. Low ridges stretch beneath open skies, while valleys quietly separate clusters of ancient remains that remained undisturbed for thousands of years. At first glance, the terrain appears ordinary. There are no towering pyramids or massive city walls to announce its importance. Instead, its significance emerges slowly, revealed through careful excavation and patient observation. The site belongs to the Hongshan culture and dates to approximately 3,500 BC to 3000 BC, making it more than 5,000 years old. When archaeologists began uncovering its remarkable structures, they realized they were looking at something far beyond an isolated village or burial ground. Niuheliang revealed an immense ceremonial complex extending across several kilometers, containing temples, stone platforms, cairns, altars, and elaborate tombs arranged within a carefully organized sacred landscape. For many years, scholars believed that highly organized ceremonial centers developed much later in Chinese history. Niuheliang forced that assumption to be reconsidered. Here was compelling evidence that large-scale religious architecture, coordinated labor, and sophisticated social organization already existed long before the emergence of historically documented kingdoms. Among the site's most remarkable discoveries is the structure commonly known as the Goddess Temple. Buried beneath layers of earth, the temple contained fragments of life-sized clay sculptures unlike anything previously found from this period. Archaeologists uncovered carefully modeled human figures, including an extraordinary face with large eyes crafted from polished jade. Even in fragmentary form, the expression remains striking. The sculpture appears calm, observant, almost timeless. Who did this figure represent? Many researchers believe it depicts a goddess or an important spiritual figure associated with the beliefs of the Hongshan culture. Others suggest it may represent an honored ancestor, a ceremonial leader, or a symbolic embodiment of fertility and renewal. No written records survive to explain its meaning, leaving every interpretation dependent upon archaeology alone. The widespread use of jade throughout Niuheliang adds another layer of mystery. Long before jade became one of the defining materials of later Chinese civilization, the people of Hongshan were already carving it with remarkable skill. Excavations uncovered delicate dragons, circular ornaments, ceremonial objects, and intricate decorative pieces whose craftsmanship remains astonishing considering their age. Among the most famous is the so-called jade pig dragon, a curled creature combining features of several animals into a form unlike anything found elsewhere. Why was jade so important? Unlike practical materials used for tools or construction, jade demanded extraordinary effort to obtain, shape, and polish. Its consistent presence within ceremonial contexts suggests that it possessed profound symbolic or spiritual significance. Some archaeologists believe jade represented purity, transformation, or a connection between earthly and spiritual worlds. Others argue that it functioned as a visible expression of social status and authority. Whatever its meaning, the craftsmanship reflects a society capable of supporting highly specialized artisans long before the appearance of large urban states. The layout of Niuheliang itself continues to fascinate researchers. Rather than clustering all structures within a single enclosed settlement, the builders distributed ceremonial monuments across hillsides and ridgelines, creating a sacred landscape integrated with the natural environment. Stone platforms overlook valleys. Burial cairns occupy elevated positions, and ceremonial areas appear connected through carefully planned spatial relationships. This raises an important question. Why build across the landscape instead of concentrating activity within one location? Some researchers believe the arrangement reflected religious beliefs that viewed mountains and natural features as sacred participants in ceremonial life. Rather than dominating nature, The builders may have deliberately incorporated the landscape into their spiritual practices, allowing hills, horizons, and changing seasons to become active elements within ritual. Astronomical possibilities have also received considerable attention. Several researchers have examined whether specific monuments align with the rising or setting sun during important times of the year. Others have investigated relationships between the placement of tombs, ceremonial platforms, and prominent peaks on the surrounding horizon. While certain alignments appear intriguing, no universal consensus has emerged. The complexity of the site, combined with thousands of years of erosion, makes precise reconstruction difficult. Even so, the possibility remains compelling. If celestial observations influence the placement of monuments, Niuheliang may represent one of the earliest large-scale ceremonial landscapes designed with both earth and sky in mind. The burial complexes reveal additional evidence of social organization. Some tombs contain significantly richer grave goods than others, particularly elaborate jade artifacts placed alongside the deceased. This pattern suggests that social distinctions existed within the Hongshan culture. Whether these differences reflected political authority, religious leadership, inherited status, or ceremonial responsibility remains uncertain, but they indicate a society considerably more complex than simple farming villages once imagined. Beyond mainstream archaeology, Niuheliang has inspired numerous speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers view the ceremonial landscape as evidence of an unexpectedly advanced spiritual tradition, whose influence may have extended far beyond northeastern China. They point to recurring symbolic motifs, monumental planning, and sophisticated jade craftsmanship as signs of a cultural tradition that may have shaped later civilizations in ways still only partially understood. Others propose that the remarkable organization of the site reflects knowledge accumulated over many generations, including careful observation of seasonal cycles, landscape geometry, and ceremonial architecture. While such ideas remain plausible, direct evidence linking Niuheliang to later cultural developments continues to be actively investigated. More speculative theories occasionally suggest that the site's sophisticated planning represents traces of a forgotten civilization, whose achievements exceeded conventional expectations for the Neolithic period. Archaeologists generally reject such conclusions, emphasizing that the accomplishments of the Hongshan culture can be understood through gradual social development, skilled craftsmanship, and long-term cultural evolution. Yet, the site's extraordinary sophistication continues to surprise even specialists, reminding us how incomplete our understanding of prehistory still remains. Excavations continue to uncover new structures, additional tombs, and previously unknown ceremonial features across the surrounding hills. Modern technologies such as remote sensing, aerial mapping, and microscopic material analysis are revealing relationships that earlier generations of archaeologists could not easily detect. Each discovery strengthens the picture of Niuheliang as one of the most significant ceremonial centers of prehistoric East Asia. Yet perhaps its greatest lesson lies in its quietness. Unlike civilizations remembered through kings, wars, or written chronicles, the people who built Niuheliang left no surviving texts to explain their beliefs. Their temples fell into ruin, their ceremonies faded into memory, and their language disappeared long before history began recording names. What remains are carefully shaped stones, polished jade, silent tombs, and a landscape whose meaning is still being slowly reconstructed. Standing among these ancient hills today, it becomes difficult not to wonder whether we are seeing only a fraction of the original story. How many sacred places remain buried beneath untouched ridges? How many symbols carved into jade once carried meanings now completely beyond our reach? And if one forgotten ceremonial center could survive unnoticed for thousands of years, what other chapters of humanity's earliest spiritual history may still be waiting beneath the earth, hidden in silence until the next discovery changes everything we thought we knew. As the sacred hills of Niuheliang slowly fade into the distance, another ancient landscape begins to unfold across the vast grasslands of Mongolia. Once again, there are no towering temples, no royal inscriptions, and no surviving chronicles to explain what once took place here. Instead, the clues appear as quiet circles of stone scattered across an endless steppe, where the horizon stretches so far that earth and sky seem to merge into one. Their simplicity conceals a mystery that has endured for thousands of years. These are the Oyu Stone Circles, silent monuments whose purpose remains one of the great, unanswered questions of prehistoric Central Asia. Standing among them is a strangely humbling experience. The stones rise only modestly above the ground, yet their deliberate arrangement immediately separates them from the natural landscape. Some circles consist of a dozen carefully placed rocks, while others are larger and more complex, occasionally accompanied by standing stones or low stone mounds nearby. Weather has shifted some of the original positions, but the geometry remains unmistakable. Every circle reflects intention, patience, and planning. The surrounding environment is almost as important as the monuments themselves. Rolling grasslands extend in every direction, interrupted only by distant mountains and the occasional rocky ridge. During summer, waves of green move with the wind across the plains. In winter, snow buries much of the landscape, leaving only the upper portions of the stones visible against the white horizon. Few places on Earth feel as open or as timeless as the Mongolian steppe, and it is within this immense silence that the Oyu Stone Circles continue to wait. Archaeologists generally associate many of these stone circles with Bronze Age and early Iron Age cultures that flourished across Mongolia between approximately 2000 BC and 700 BC. This was a period long before the rise of the great nomadic empires that would later dominate the region. Communities moved seasonally across the grasslands, raising livestock, producing bronze tools, and maintaining extensive networks of exchange that connected distant parts of Eurasia. Although these societies built relatively few permanent settlements, they transformed the landscape through carefully constructed monuments. Stone circles, burial mounds, standing stones, and ritual complexes became enduring markers that outlasted the temporary camps of everyday life. The monuments survived because stone remembers where people once gathered, even when everything else has disappeared. One of the leading archaeological interpretations suggests that the Oyu Stone Circles served ceremonial purposes. Circular spaces have appeared repeatedly throughout human history, often representing unity, continuity, or the recurring cycles of nature. For highly mobile pastoral communities, permanent stone circles may have created sacred places where seasonal gatherings, religious ceremonies, or communal decisions unfolded beneath the open sky. Another widely accepted possibility connects many circles with funerary traditions. Across Mongolia, archaeologists have documented numerous burial monuments known as kirigsurs, large stone structures frequently surrounded by smaller satellite circles. Excavations at several sites have uncovered horse remains, animal offerings, charcoal deposits, pottery fragments, and occasional human burials. These discoveries suggest that at least some circles participated in elaborate ceremonies honoring ancestors or important members of the community. Yet, the evidence refuses to fit a single explanation. Not every circle contains burials. Many appear completely empty beneath the surface. Others lack artifacts altogether, while some stand isolated far from known ceremonial complexes. This variation has led many researchers to believe that the Oyu Stone Circles served multiple functions depending on location, period, and cultural tradition. Rather than representing one unified practice, they may preserve centuries of changing beliefs expressed through similar architectural forms. The placement of the circles continues to attract particular attention. Many occupy elevated ridges, gentle slopes, or broad plateaus overlooking vast sections of the surrounding steppe. Their builders repeatedly selected locations offering expansive views rather than sheltered valleys. Was visibility simply practical, allowing monuments to remain visible across great distances? Or did these landscapes possess symbolic importance that modern observers can only partially appreciate? For nomadic societies whose lives followed seasonal migrations, the landscape itself may have carried profound meaning. Rivers, mountains, grazing grounds, and distant horizons shape not only survival but also memory, identity, and spiritual belief. The Oyu Stone Circles may have functioned as fixed points within an otherwise constantly changing world, linking generations through Pitae. Astronomy has also entered the discussion. Several prehistoric monuments elsewhere in the world display alignments with the sun, moon, or prominent stars. Because many of the Oyu Stone Circles exhibit careful geometry, researchers have investigated whether certain arrangements correspond with celestial events such as solstices or equinoxes. A handful of sites appear suggestive, particularly where standing stones mark specific directions along the horizon. However, the archaeological evidence remains inconclusive. Erosion, shifting stones, and the sheer number of monuments make it difficult to distinguish intentional alignments from coincidence. Most specialists agree that while astronomical observations were undoubtedly important to ancient pastoral societies, no universal celestial design has yet been demonstrated across the Oyu Stone Circles as a whole. Beyond conventional archaeology, the circles have inspired a variety of more speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers believe they formed part of a vast ceremonial network extending across the Eurasian steppe, connecting distant communities through shared architectural traditions. They note similarities between circular stone monuments found from Mongolia to Western Europe, suggesting that ideas may have traveled remarkable distances through migration and cultural exchange. While prehistoric contacts across Eurasia are well documented in some periods, direct connections between these widely separated monuments remain difficult to prove. Others focus on the remarkable consistency of the circle's geometry. They propose that ancient builders possessed sophisticated systems of measurement transmitted orally across generations, allowing monuments to be constructed according to carefully preserved proportions without written mathematics. Archaeologists readily acknowledge the engineering abilities of prehistoric communities, though exactly how such knowledge was organized continues to be explored. Local traditions add yet another dimension to the mystery. Some Mongolian legends describe ancient stone circles as places where ancestors gathered beneath the eternal sky to seek guidance or honor unseen forces connected with the land. Other stories speak of sacred spaces, where ceremonies once united communities during seasonal migrations. Although these accounts emerged long after the monuments were built and cannot be directly linked to their original creators, they reflect an enduring respect for places that seem to exist outside ordinary time. Modern archaeological technologies continue revealing new surprises. Satellite imagery, drone surveys, and high-resolution mapping have identified previously unknown stone circles hidden across remote parts of Mongolia. What once appeared to be isolated monuments increasingly resembles an immense archaeological landscape stretching across hundreds of kilometers. Many circles remain unexcavated, while countless others may still lie concealed beneath grasses, shallow soil, or centuries of accumulated sediment. Every new discovery expands the picture while reminding researchers how much remains unknown. The people who built these circles left behind almost no written record, no monuments celebrating rulers, and no texts explaining their beliefs. Instead, they entrusted memory to stone, allowing carefully arranged rocks to outlast language itself. Today, the wind continues to move across the same plains where these circles first appeared thousands of years ago. The seasons continue their endless rhythm. Herds still cross portions of the steppe, much as they once did in antiquity. Yet the meaning behind these quiet monuments remains just beyond our reach. Were they sacred sanctuaries, burial grounds, celestial markers, gathering places, or expressions of a worldview now almost entirely forgotten? And if hundreds more circles still wait undiscovered beneath the vast Mongolian landscape, how many forgotten chapters of prehistoric humanity remain hidden beneath the grass, silently waiting for the moment when the earth finally reveals them? As the winds of the Mongolian steppe slowly fade into silence, our journey carries us back across continents to the gentle plains of southern Portugal. Once again, the landscape appears peaceful, almost ordinary. Olive groves, cork oak forests, and rolling hills stretch toward the horizon, giving little hint that beneath this quiet countryside stands one of Europe's largest and most remarkable prehistoric monuments. Like the stone circles we have just left behind, it was built by people who left no written explanation of their intentions. Yet, unlike those open circles, this monument reaches inward into darkness, a chamber of stone that has guarded its secrets for more than 3,000 years. This is the Anta Grande do Zambujeiro. Hidden near the historic city of Evora, the monument rises from the earth with quiet authority. Enormous granite slabs, some weighing many tons and standing several meters high, form a circular chamber unlike anything naturally found in the surrounding landscape. These upright stones lean gently toward one another, creating an enclosed space that once supported an equally massive stone cap. Extending outward from the chamber is a long stone passage, carefully aligned and originally covered beneath an earthen mound that transformed the structure into an artificial hill. Today, much of that mound has disappeared, exposing the skeleton of the monument to open skies. The immense stones remain, weathered by rain, wind, and countless generations of changing civilizations. Standing within the chamber, surrounded by towering slabs carved only by simple prehistoric tools, it becomes difficult to comprehend the effort required to create such a place. Most archaeologists date the Anta Grande do Zambujeiro to approximately 4000 BC to 3000 BC, placing its construction during the late Neolithic period. This was an age long before metal tools became widespread across Europe, yet communities were already capable of organizing labor on a remarkable scale. Transporting, shaping, and raising granite blocks of this size demanded careful engineering, cooperation, and planning that extended far beyond the abilities of a small family group. The monument belongs to a broader tradition of megalithic architecture that spread across Atlantic Europe during prehistory. Thousands of dolmens, passage graves, and stone chambers appear throughout Portugal, Spain, France, Ireland, and Britain, suggesting that communities separated by great distances shared surprisingly similar architectural ideas. Whether these similarities emerged through cultural exchange or independent development remains one of archaeology's enduring questions. Excavations inside the Anta Grande do Zambujeiro have uncovered stone tools, polished axes, pottery fragments, beads, arrowheads, and human remains, strongly supporting its interpretation as a collective burial monument. Rather than serving a single individual, the chamber appears to have welcomed repeated burials over many generations. Families likely returned here again and again, adding new remains while honoring ancestors whose memories became inseparable from the monument itself. Yet, burial alone may not explain its significance. The scale of the structure exceeds what might have been required for practical funerary purposes. Why invest such enormous effort into creating a monument that would spend most of its existence sealed beneath an earthen mound? The answer may lie not simply in death, but in the relationship between memory, landscape, and belief. Many archaeologists believe monuments like this functioned as sacred places where the living maintained ongoing connections with their ancestors. Rather than marking an ending, the chamber may have represented a point of continued interaction between generations. Ceremonies, offerings, seasonal gatherings, and communal rituals may all have unfolded around the entrance long after individual burials were completed. The long entrance passage introduces another fascinating possibility. Across Europe, numerous passage graves display orientations toward the rising sun during particular times of the year, especially around the winter solstice. Researchers have therefore examined whether the Anta Grande do Zambujeiro follows a similar pattern. Some studies suggest that the entrance may indeed have been positioned to capture the first rays of the morning sun during specific seasons, allowing light to penetrate deep into the otherwise dark chamber. If intentional, such an arrangement would have carried profound symbolic meaning. Light entering the chamber after the longest nights of the year could have represented renewal, rebirth, or the continuing relationship between life and death. Yet, the monument has undergone thousands of years of weathering, while portions of its original structure have collapsed or shifted. As a result, precise alignments remain difficult to reconstruct with certainty. The builders themselves remain equally mysterious. No written language survives to identify the people who erected these immense stones. Their names, beliefs, and spoken words disappeared thousands of years before recorded history reached the Iberian Peninsula. Archaeologists instead reconstruct their lives through fragments, tools shaped by hand, pottery decorated with simple patterns, traces of pollen preserved within ancient soil, and the stones they left standing across the countryside. Beyond mainstream archaeology, the monument has inspired a wide range of speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers argue that the remarkable similarities between megalithic monuments across Atlantic Europe reflect an unexpectedly connected prehistoric world. According to this view, communities separated by hundreds or even thousands of kilometers exchanged architectural knowledge, religious concepts, and engineering techniques over generations of travel and trade. While increasing evidence supports prehistoric contact between distant regions, the full extent of those cultural connections remains actively debated. Others point to the extraordinary precision with which many megalithic monuments incorporate landscape, horizon, and celestial observation. They suggest that prehistoric builders possessed sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded within stone architecture. Although archaeologists acknowledge that some monuments clearly display astronomical relationships, there is no consensus that every large megalithic structure served such a purpose. In many cases, practical, ceremonial, and symbolic motivations likely existed together rather than separately. Local folklore has added its own layer to the monument's long history. For centuries, massive stone chambers like the Anta Grande do Zambujeiro were often described as the homes of giants, ancient heroes, or supernatural beings. Medieval communities, unable to imagine ordinary humans raising stones of such size with primitive tools, attributed their construction to forces beyond human capability. These legends reveal less about the monument's actual builders than about the enduring power such places hold over the imagination. Modern technology continues revealing new information. Ground-penetrating radar, drone surveys, microscopic residue analysis, and advanced dating techniques have expanded our understanding of prehistoric monument building throughout Portugal. Researchers increasingly recognize that structures like the Anta Grande do Zambujeiro rarely existed in isolation. Instead, they formed part of larger ceremonial landscapes, including standing stones, smaller tombs, ancient pathways, and settlements whose full relationships are only beginning to emerge. Even today, many areas surrounding the monument remain only partially explored. Beneath nearby fields may lie additional graves, ritual spaces, or traces of communities whose daily lives unfolded in the shadow of these enormous stones. Every excavation raises new questions about the social organization, engineering knowledge, and spiritual beliefs of the people who transformed raw granite into one of Europe's greatest prehistoric monuments. Standing inside the chamber, surrounded by towering slabs that have remained upright for more than 5 millennia, silence takes on an unusual weight. The outside world seems distant. Time itself feels slower. Countless generations have entered this space with purposes we can only partially reconstruct. They left behind no written explanation, only stone, shadow, and extraordinary craftsmanship. Perhaps that is why the Grande do Zambujeiro continues to fascinate. It reminds us that the greatest archaeological mysteries are not always hidden beneath the earth. Sometimes they have stood in plain sight for thousands of years, patiently waiting for humanity to understand why they were built, and whether the answers still lie buried somewhere beneath the ancient landscape that surrounds them. As the immense granite chamber of the Grande do Zambujeiro slowly disappears into the rolling landscapes of Portugal, another prehistoric monument emerges farther north, across the hills of England. Once again, the builders left behind no written record, no royal inscription, and no surviving explanation for their extraordinary work. Instead, they shaped the land itself into a place where earth, stone, and sky appear carefully woven together. For more than 4,000 years, this monument has remained remarkably quiet, inviting generations of visitors to ask the same enduring question: what truly happened here? This is Arbor Low. High on the limestone plateau of Derbyshire, within the rugged beauty of England's Peak District, Arbor Low rests in a landscape where the horizon stretches gently in every direction. The monument does not announce itself with towering pillars visible from miles away. Instead, it reveals its presence gradually. A broad, circular earthwork rises from the surrounding fields, enclosed by a deep ditch and an outer embankment. Inside this vast enclosure lies a ring of massive limestone blocks, each resting flat upon the ground, as though frozen in the middle of a forgotten transformation. Unlike the standing stones of Stonehenge, the stones of Arbor Low no longer stand upright. Whether they were intentionally laid flat, collapsed naturally over time, or were deliberately pulled down during a later period remains uncertain. Their fallen positions create an atmosphere unlike any other prehistoric monument in Britain. Instead of reaching toward the sky, the stones seem to sleep upon the earth, preserving an unusual silence that only deepens the mystery. Most archaeologists date Arbor Low to approximately 2500 BC, during the late Neolithic period. It belongs to a remarkable era when communities across Britain invested extraordinary effort into constructing ceremonial landscapes, stone circles, burial mounds, cursus monuments, and earthworks. Although farming had already become well established, these societies devoted immense resources to projects whose purposes appear to have extended far beyond everyday survival. The monument itself is impressive in both scale and design. The circular enclosure measures roughly 90 meters across, surrounded by one of the largest henges in Britain. More than 40 limestone blocks originally formed the inner stone circle, accompanied by a central grouping of larger stones. Unlike defensive fortifications, the ditch lies inside the surrounding bank rather than outside it. This unusual arrangement appears repeatedly among prehistoric henges and strongly suggests that these structures were never intended for military protection. Instead, they seem to have defined sacred space. Crossing the bank and descending into the enclosed interior would have created a deliberate transition from the ordinary landscape into a place set apart for ceremonies, gatherings, or rituals whose meanings have long disappeared. The very architecture encourages movement, attention, and reflection rather than defense. Excavations have uncovered flint tools, fragments of pottery, animal bones, and evidence of repeated human activity spanning many centuries. Nearby burial mounds, particularly Gib Hill, located only a short distance away, suggest that Arbor Low formed part of a much larger ceremonial complex rather than an isolated monument. The surrounding landscape itself appears carefully organized, linking earthworks, burial sites, and natural features into a unified prehistoric setting. Yet, many of its greatest questions remain unanswered. Why were the stones brought here at such enormous effort? Limestone blocks weighing several tons had to be quarried, transported, and positioned with remarkable precision, using only Neolithic technology. The undertaking demanded planning, cooperation, and shared purpose on a scale difficult to imagine for communities without written administration or metal tools. Equally intriguing is the unusual arrangement of the central stones. Some archaeologists believe they may have supported ceremonies performed within the heart of the monument. Others suggest they marked an especially sacred area reserved for rituals involving only selected members of the community. Without written evidence, the original significance of these stones remains open to careful interpretation. The relationship between Arbor Low and the surrounding landscape has attracted increasing attention in recent decades. The monument occupies elevated ground, offering broad views across Derbyshire's hills. Several researchers have suggested that its position was chosen not simply for visibility, but for symbolic reasons. Natural ridgelines, distant peaks, and changing light throughout the seasons may all have contributed to the experience of those entering the enclosure. Astronomical possibilities have also been investigated. Like many prehistoric monuments throughout Britain, Arbor Low has been examined for possible alignments with the rising or setting sun during solstices or equinoxes. Certain entrance points and stone positions appear suggestive, particularly when viewed against the surrounding horizon. However, centuries of weathering, stone movement, and uncertainty regarding the original positions make definitive conclusions difficult. While celestial observation almost certainly played an important role in many Neolithic societies, exactly how it influenced Arbor Low remains a matter of ongoing research. Another fascinating aspect involves the fallen stones themselves. Were they ever standing? This seemingly simple question continues to generate debate. Many archaeologists believe the stones originally stood upright before collapsing naturally or being deliberately toppled during later periods. Others have proposed that at least some stones may always have rested at low angles, contributing to a ceremonial design unlike better-known stone circles. Because the original sockets remain difficult to interpret with complete certainty, the answer remains elusive. Beyond mainstream archaeology, Arbor Low has inspired numerous speculative ideas. Some independent researchers argue that monuments like Arbor Low formed part of an immense ceremonial network, connecting prehistoric Britain through shared geometry, astronomical knowledge, and sacred landscapes. They point to recurring architectural patterns visible at sites separated by considerable distances, suggesting that Neolithic communities possessed unexpectedly sophisticated systems of communication and planning. Others focus on the monument's remarkable acoustic qualities. Within the enclosed henge, sounds behave differently than on the surrounding plateau. Wind, voices, and footsteps often seem softened or redirected by the earthworks. A few researchers have suggested that these subtle acoustic effects may have enhanced ceremonies held within the enclosure, though such ideas remain difficult to verify archaeologically. Local folklore has preserved its own explanations for centuries. Like many ancient stone circles across Britain, Arbor Low eventually became associated with giants, supernatural builders, and mysterious forces whose identities shifted with each generation of storytelling. Medieval communities viewed such monuments as relics of forgotten ages beyond ordinary human ability, reflecting the enduring impression left by prehistoric engineering long after its true origins had faded from memory. Modern scientific investigation continues to reshape our understanding of the site. Geophysical surveys have identified previously unknown archaeological features surrounding the henge, while environmental studies reveal how the surrounding landscape changed throughout prehistory. Increasingly, researchers see Arbor Low not as an isolated monument, but as one component within an extensive ceremonial landscape whose full complexity has yet to be uncovered. Even today, large portions of that landscape remain only partially explored. Beneath nearby fields may lie additional pathways, timber structures, burial sites, or ritual features that once gave greater meaning to the monument's position. Every new discovery expands the story, while reminding us how much remains hidden beneath centuries of soil and vegetation. As daylight slowly fades across the Peak District, long shadows stretch between the fallen stones, and silence settles once again inside the ancient earthwork. The monument has witnessed changing climates, migrating peoples, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and countless generations who stood where we now stand, wondering why this extraordinary place was created. Arbor Low offers no final answers. Instead, it preserves something perhaps even more valuable, a rare opportunity to encounter a world whose beliefs were carved into stone rather than written on parchment. And somewhere beneath those quiet hills, beyond the reach of memory, perhaps the missing pieces of its story are still waiting, hidden beneath the earth until the next discovery brings them back into the light. As the silent stones of Arbor Low gradually disappear beneath the mist of the English countryside, our journey crosses oceans to a landscape shaped by towering mountains, dry winds, and centuries of resilience. Here, mystery is woven not only into ancient architecture, but into the memory of an entire people whose story survives in ruined walls clinging to a rugged hillside. Time has weathered these stones, yet they continue to whisper fragments of a past that refuses to disappear. This is the story of the Quilmes Ruins. High within the Calchaquí valleys of northwestern Argentina, the ruins spread across the lower slopes of a barren mountain, surrounded by a landscape of striking contrasts. The earth is dry and stony, while distant peaks rise beneath an endless sky that shifts from brilliant blue during the day to fields of glittering stars after sunset. Rain is scarce, vegetation is sparse, and silence dominates the valley. It is a place where every sound seems to travel farther than expected, and where ancient walls appear almost inseparable from the rock upon which they were built. From a distance, the settlement resembles an extension of the mountain itself. Hundreds of stone structures climb the hillside in carefully organized terraces, connected by narrow pathways that twist upward through the ruins. Homes, storage buildings, defensive walls, reservoirs, and ceremonial spaces remain visible despite centuries of abandonment. Although many sections have been restored, enough original masonry survives to reveal the remarkable planning behind one of the largest pre-Columbian settlements in Argentina. The Quilmes people, from whom the site takes its name, were part of the Diaguita cultural tradition that flourished throughout the Andean regions of northwestern Argentina. Archaeological evidence suggests that the settlement expanded significantly between approximately AD 1000 and the arrival of Spanish forces in the 16th century, though earlier occupation in the region stretches back much further. By the time European explorers reached these valleys, Quilmes had become a thriving fortified city supporting thousands of inhabitants. Its location was no accident. The settlement occupied a naturally defensive position overlooking the valley below. Steep slopes protected one side, while carefully constructed stone walls strengthened vulnerable approaches. Water was collected through sophisticated channels and reservoirs designed to capture seasonal rainfall and mountain runoff. Agricultural terraces extended across nearby land, allowing crops to flourish despite the region's challenging climate. To modern observers, the ruins demonstrate remarkable engineering adapted perfectly to a harsh environment. Every stone appears positioned with purpose. Every pathway follows the contours of the mountain rather than attempting to dominate it. The settlement reflects a deep understanding of both architecture and landscape developed over many generations. Yet, the greatest mystery surrounding Quilmes is not how it was built. It is how long its people endured. When Spanish colonial forces entered the Calchaquí valleys during the 16th century, they encountered determined resistance unlike almost anything experienced elsewhere in the region. The Quilmes and neighboring communities defended their homeland through a series of conflicts collectively known as the Calchaquí Wars. These struggles lasted for well over a century, making them among the longest sustained indigenous resistance movements in South American history. Despite repeated military campaigns, the settlement continued to resist. Only in 1667, after decades of warfare, siege, and hardship, did the remaining defenders finally surrender. Historical accounts describe how thousands of surviving Quilmes people were then forced to leave their homeland and march hundreds of kilometers eastward to the outskirts of present-day Buenos Aires. Many perished during the journey. Others died shortly after arriving in unfamiliar surroundings. Their ancient city was abandoned, and over time the mountain slowly reclaimed its silence. Walking through the ruins today, it is impossible to separate archaeology from memory. Every collapsed wall represents not merely an ancient structure but the lives of people who defended this place across generations. Unlike many archaeological sites abandoned through gradual decline, Quilmes preserves the aftermath of a dramatic historical turning point, whose consequences still resonate today. Excavations have uncovered pottery, stone tools, agricultural implements, ceremonial objects, and evidence of sophisticated craftsmanship. Researchers have also identified extensive storage facilities, suggesting careful planning for periods of drought or conflict. The settlement's organization reflects a complex society capable of coordinating agriculture, construction, water management, and defense on a considerable scale. Religion likely played an equally important role. Although relatively few ceremonial structures have survived intact, archaeologists believe surrounding mountains themselves may have held profound spiritual significance. Throughout the Andes, high peaks were often regarded as sacred places associated with ancestors, protective spirits, or powerful natural forces. The positioning of Quilmes within this dramatic landscape may therefore have reflected not only strategic concerns, but also deeply rooted cosmological beliefs. Some researchers have explored possible astronomical connections within the settlement's layout. Certain architectural alignments appear to correspond with solar events or prominent mountain peaks visible along the horizon. If intentional, these relationships may have helped regulate seasonal agriculture or ceremonial calendars. As with many ancient sites, however, the available evidence remains suggestive rather than conclusive. Beyond mainstream archaeology, the ruins have naturally inspired more speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers argue that the remarkable planning visible throughout Quilmes reflects knowledge inherited from much older Andean traditions whose origins remain only partially understood. They point to sophisticated water systems, defensive engineering, and careful adaptation to difficult terrain as evidence of centuries of accumulated expertise transmitted across generations. Others focus on local traditions describing unusual experiences among the ruins after sunset. Visitors occasionally report an overwhelming sense of presence, unexplained echoes, or the feeling of being quietly observed while walking through the abandoned streets. Such experiences are deeply personal and impossible to verify scientifically. Yet, stories of this kind have become part of the site's enduring folklore. Whether shaped by the atmosphere, imagination, or the emotional weight of history itself, they contribute to the quiet aura that surrounds the ancient city. Legends also speak of hidden chambers concealed beneath the mountainside, containing ceremonial objects or valuables protected during the final years of resistance. Despite decades of archaeological investigation, no evidence has confirmed these stories. Still, the rugged terrain surrounding Quilmes remains only partially explored, leaving room for continued curiosity. Modern archaeological research continues to reveal new details about daily life within the settlement. Advances in environmental archaeology, remote sensing, and microscopic analysis have improved understanding of ancient agriculture, trade networks, diet, and construction techniques. Increasingly, scholars recognize Quilmes not simply as an isolated fortress, but as one important center within a much broader cultural landscape that connected communities throughout the Calchaquí valleys. Even today, countless questions remain unanswered. How many structures still lie buried beneath centuries of sediment? How much of the surrounding landscape once formed part of the ancient settlement? What ceremonies unfolded within its plazas before conflict transformed the city into a fortress? And how much knowledge disappeared forever when its people were forced from the mountains they had called home for generations? As evening shadows slowly climb the stone terraces, the ruins seem to merge once more with the mountain itself. Wind moves gently through abandoned passageways where voices once echoed between crowded homes. The walls remain standing, not as monuments to conquest, but as quiet witnesses to endurance, memory, and resilience. They remind us that history is not always preserved in written chronicles. Sometimes it survives in silence, etched into stone by people who refuse to surrender their identity. And somewhere beneath these weathered terraces, where countless stories remain buried beneath earth and time, perhaps the mountain still guards secrets that have yet to emerge into the light. As the weathered terraces of Quilmes gradually disappear into the shadows of the Andes, our journey continues toward a very different landscape. The dry mountain air gives way to dense tropical forests, winding rivers, and the warm coastal waters of the Caribbean. Hidden beneath thick vegetation and centuries of silence lies another ancient city, one that once stood at the edge of both land and sea. Unlike the fortress of Quilmes, this place was not defined by resistance, but by growth, ceremony, and remarkable ambition. Yet, despite decades of research, it still leaves archaeologists with questions that echo through the jungle. This is Cerros. On the northern coast of present-day Belize, where mangrove swamps meet the turquoise waters of Chetumal Bay, the ruins of Cerros emerge almost unexpectedly from the surrounding forest. Trees and vines wrap themselves around weathered stone structures, while birds and insects fill the humid air with constant sound. At first glance, the site appears peaceful, almost untouched. But beneath the roots and soil rests one of the earliest major ceremonial centers of the ancient Maya world. Unlike many famous Maya cities buried deep within the interior rainforests, Cerros occupied a strategic coastal location. Rivers flowing inland met the Caribbean here, creating an ideal crossroads for travel and trade. Canoes carrying people, goods, and ideas could move between distant settlements with surprising efficiency. Long before roads connected civilizations, waterways served as natural highways, and Cerros stood at one of their most important intersections. Archaeological evidence suggests that the city flourished primarily between approximately 400 BC and AD 100. During this period, Cerros transformed from a modest farming community into a thriving ceremonial and commercial center. Monumental architecture appeared with remarkable speed. Massive platforms, stepped pyramids, plazas, and residential districts spread across the landscape, reflecting a society becoming increasingly organized and socially complex. One of the site's most striking features is its collection of pyramidal temples. Although smaller than the towering pyramids built centuries later by the classic Maya, these early structures reveal surprisingly advanced planning. Broad staircases rise toward temple platforms, while carefully carved architectural facades once displayed elaborate symbolic imagery. Among the most remarkable discoveries are giant stucco masks decorating the sides of ceremonial buildings. These enormous sculpted faces, several meters high, portray mythological beings associated with kingship, creation, and the sacred forces believed to govern the universe. Even after thousands of years, the masks retain an extraordinary presence. Their broad eyes, stylized features, and commanding expression seem designed not merely for decoration, but for communication. To those approaching the temples, these immense faces would have projected both religious authority and political power. They transformed architecture itself into storytelling, allowing myths to become part of the landscape. The orientation of Cerros has fascinated researchers for decades. Several major structures appear deliberately aligned with important solar events, particularly sunrise during the equinoxes and solstices. From specific locations within the city, the rising sun would have illuminated temples in carefully planned sequences throughout the year. Such alignments were not unique within the Maya world, but Cerros represents one of the earliest known examples of large-scale ceremonial architecture, incorporating astronomical observation into urban design. For the Maya, the movement of celestial bodies was deeply intertwined with agriculture, religion, and political legitimacy. Observing the sun, moon, Venus, and stars helped regulate planting seasons, ceremonial calendars, and sacred rituals. At Cerros, architecture may have functioned as a monumental calendar, transforming predictable movements across the sky into visible demonstrations of cosmic order. Yet, astronomy alone does not explain the city's remarkable development. One enduring mystery concerns the speed with which Cerros expanded. Within a relatively short period, modest settlement gave way to monumental construction requiring enormous amounts of labor, organization, and resources. What social or political changes made such rapid transformation possible? Did emerging rulers inspire unprecedented cooperation, or did expanding trade networks provide wealth that fueled ambitious building projects? Trade almost certainly played a significant role. Excavations have uncovered obsidian from distant volcanic regions, marine shells, finely crafted pottery, jade ornaments, and other materials originating hundreds of kilometers away. These discoveries reveal that Cerros participated in extensive exchange networks connecting communities throughout Mesoamerica. Far from existing in isolation, the city occupied an increasingly important position within a vibrant world of commerce and cultural interaction. Then, almost as suddenly as it rose, Cerros entered a period of decline. By around AD 400, much of the city's monumental core had been abandoned. Later, populations continued occupying portions of the area, but the great era of large-scale construction had ended. Why? This question continues to challenge archaeologists. Some researchers point to shifting trade routes that reduced Cerros' strategic importance. Others suggest environmental changes including rising sea levels, altered coastlines, or changing river systems that gradually undermined the city's economic foundation. Political instability, internal conflict, or competition from emerging regional centers may also have contributed. It is entirely possible that several factors acted together over generations, slowly transforming a thriving ceremonial center into a quiet ruin reclaimed by the forest. Beyond mainstream archaeology, Cerros has inspired more speculative ideas. Some independent researchers propose that its sophisticated astronomical alignments indicate a deeper understanding of celestial cycles than traditionally recognized for this early period of Maya civilization. They argue that knowledge preserved at Cerros may have influenced later ceremonial centers across the Maya world. While early Maya astronomy was unquestionably advanced, tracing direct lines of influence remains difficult because many intermediate stages of cultural development are still being investigated. Others focus on the symbolic meaning of the giant stucco masks. Their imposing appearance has led to suggestions that they represented more than mythological figures, that they embodied cosmological concepts or sacred knowledge understood only by initiated priests. Archaeologists generally interpret the masks within established Maya religious traditions, yet their precise ceremonial role continues to invite discussion. Local folklore occasionally adds another dimension to the ruins. Stories speak of hidden chambers beneath the pyramids, forgotten offerings sealed within temple foundations, or ancient spirits continuing to watch over the abandoned city. Such tales cannot be verified through archaeology, but they reflect the enduring respect inspired by places where history and landscape seem inseparable. Modern research continues to uncover new surprises. Remote sensing technologies, detailed mapping, and careful excavation have revealed additional residential districts, ceremonial platforms, and water management features extending beyond the site's most visible monuments. Each discovery reinforces the idea that Cerros was larger and more sophisticated than originally believed. The surrounding forests may still conceal important portions of the ancient city. Beneath layers of vegetation and accumulated soil, undiscovered structures likely remain hidden, preserving information about daily life, political organization, and religious practice that has yet to emerge. Advances in archaeological science continue revealing details invisible only a generation ago, suggesting that Cerros still has much to teach. As evening settles across the bay, the sounds of the jungle gradually replace the voices that once filled the plazas. The great stucco masks watch silently from weathered temple walls, their expressions unchanged despite more than 2,000 years of passing time. The sea continues its gentle rhythm against the nearby shore, just as it did when merchants, priests, and rulers first arrived by canoe. Cerros reminds us that even civilizations capable of remarkable achievement can fade quietly into the landscape, leaving behind monuments that outlive memory itself. And somewhere beneath the tangled roots and ancient stone, perhaps another hidden chamber, another forgotten inscription, or another piece of the city's unfinished story still waits patiently for the moment when history uncovers it once again. As the jungle-covered temples of Cerros slowly disappear beneath a canopy of green, our journey turns toward a landscape that could not be more different. The humid forests of Central America give way to the immense silence of the Sahara, where endless plateaus stretch beneath an unforgiving sun. At first glance, this appears to be a place where little could survive, let alone flourish. Yet, scattered across these vast stone plains are the remains of settlements that challenge one of the oldest assumptions about the world's greatest desert. Long before the Sahara became the arid wilderness we know today, people built thriving communities here. Among the most remarkable of them is the Tichitt settlement. Deep within present-day Mauritania, the Tichitt Plateau rises above the surrounding desert in a series of rugged cliffs and broad tablelands. Winds sweep across the rocky landscape, carrying fine sand through abandoned streets where no voices have echoed for thousands of years. The silence feels almost absolute. Broken stone walls blend naturally into the surrounding terrain, making entire settlements nearly invisible until viewed from above or approached on foot. From a distance, the ruins resemble little more than scattered piles of rock. But closer inspection reveals remarkable order. Carefully constructed stone houses, narrow passageways, defensive walls, storage structures, and terraced enclosures emerge from the landscape with surprising clarity. These were not temporary camps left behind by wandering travelers. They were permanent communities, planned with care and maintained across generations. The Tichitt tradition, as archaeologists often describe it, flourished between approximately 1900 BC and 500 BC. During this long period, dozens of stone settlements spread across the plateau, forming one of the earliest known examples of complex village life in West Africa. Long before the rise of famous kingdoms farther south, the people of Tichitt were developing organized communities supported by agriculture, livestock herding, and regional trade. Perhaps the greatest surprise lies in the environment itself. Today, the Sahara appears almost incapable of sustaining large populations. Yet, during the period when these settlements flourished, the climate was significantly wetter than it is now. Seasonal rainfall supported grasslands, lakes, and fertile valleys where crops could grow and animals could graze. The transformation was gradual, unfolding over centuries as the African humid period came to an end and the desert slowly expanded across the region. The people of Tichitt adapted with remarkable ingenuity. Excavations have revealed evidence of cultivated pearl millet, one of Africa's earliest domesticated grains. Stone granaries and storage facilities suggest careful planning for future harvests, while animal bones indicate the importance of cattle, sheep, and goats. Agriculture and herding existed side by side, creating a flexible economy capable of responding to changing environmental conditions. One of the most striking features of the settlements is their architecture. Unlike many prehistoric communities built from wood or mud, the inhabitants of Tichitt constructed homes using locally available stone. Thick walls enclosed clusters of rooms arranged along narrow lanes, creating neighborhoods that appear surprisingly organized. Some settlements even contain evidence of zoning, with residential areas separated from livestock enclosures and communal spaces. This raises an intriguing question. How did these communities organize themselves without written administration? The construction of extensive stone villages required cooperation on a considerable scale. Building walls, maintaining terraces, managing water resources, and coordinating agricultural production all demanded shared systems of decision-making. Whether leadership rested with elders, influential families, religious figures, or some other social structure remains uncertain. The archaeological evidence demonstrates organization, but reveals very little about the people who guided it. Another fascinating aspect involves the sheer number of settlements. Researchers have identified dozens of stone villages scattered across the Tichitt Plateau, many connected by visible pathways and located within reasonable traveling distance of one another. This distribution suggests that individual communities did not exist in isolation. Instead, they may have formed an interconnected regional network, exchanging goods, knowledge, and perhaps even participating in shared ceremonial traditions. Trade likely played an increasingly important role as the settlements expanded. Archaeological discoveries include stone tools, pottery, grinding implements, and evidence of long-distance exchange involving raw materials unavailable locally. Although the precise routes remain uncertain, the Tichitt communities almost certainly interacted with neighboring regions, contributing to wider networks that would later connect much of West Africa. Yet, despite their apparent success, these settlements gradually declined. The most widely accepted explanation points toward environmental change. As rainfall decreased and the Sahara became progressively drier, maintaining agriculture and large permanent communities grew increasingly difficult. Water sources disappeared, grazing lands contracted, and fields that once supported crops slowly transformed into desert. Many archaeologists believe inhabitants gradually migrated southward in search of more reliable environments. Some researchers have suggested that these movements may have contributed to the development of later societies within the Sahel, carrying agricultural knowledge and cultural traditions into regions where new civilizations eventually emerged. Even so, many questions remain unanswered. Did climate alone explain the abandonment of the settlements? Or were social, political, or economic pressures equally important? Could competition over diminishing resources have encouraged migration long before environmental conditions became impossible? The archaeological record preserves fragments of these transitions but not the conversations or decisions that shaped them. Beyond mainstream archaeology, the Tichitt settlements have inspired more speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers argue that the remarkable planning visible across multiple villages reflects a level of regional organization more advanced than traditionally recognized. They suggest that the plateau may once have supported an early political system coordinating construction, agriculture, and trade across considerable distances. While archaeologists acknowledge increasing social complexity within the Tichitt tradition, evidence for centralized political authority remains inconclusive. Others focus on the settlement's relationship with the surrounding landscape. The positioning of villages along cliffs and elevated plateaus has prompted suggestions that natural landmarks carried symbolic or ceremonial significance beyond their obvious defensive advantages. In many ancient cultures, prominent geological features became places where practical life and spiritual belief merged. Whether this was also true for Tichitt remains an open question. Local oral traditions preserved in surrounding regions occasionally speak of ancient stone cities swallowed by the desert as the climate changed. While these stories cannot be directly linked to the archaeological settlements, they echo a broader human memory of landscapes transformed over immense spans of time. Such traditions remind us that dramatic environmental change has shaped civilizations long before written history began recording its effects. Modern archaeological research continues to reshape understanding of the region. Satellite imagery has identified additional settlement sites, ancient pathways, and agricultural features previously hidden beneath shifting sands. Every new survey suggests that the Tichitt cultural landscape was larger and more interconnected than originally believed. Advances in environmental science have also provided increasingly detailed reconstructions of ancient climates, revealing how lakes, rivers, and vegetation gradually disappeared across the Sahara. These discoveries allow archaeologists to place human decisions within the broader story of environmental transformation, showing not only how ancient societies adapted, but also where adaptation eventually reached its limits. Standing among the weathered stone walls today, it is difficult to imagine that these quiet ruins once overlooked green valleys filled with crops, livestock, and thriving communities. The wind now carries only sand through passageways where families once lived, worked, and planned for future generations. The desert appears timeless, yet the stones tell a very different story, a reminder that landscapes can change beyond recognition, and that entire civilizations can vanish not through sudden catastrophe, but through slow transformations unfolding across centuries. As the stone villages of the Tichitt Plateau slowly disappear beneath the drifting sands of the Sahara, our journey returns to the dense tropical forests of Central America. Once again, nature has reclaimed what was once a thriving center of power. Thick vines wrap around carved monuments, towering trees rise through abandoned plazas, and the calls of distant birds echo across temples where kings once proclaimed their victories. Hidden beneath the jungle canopy lies a city whose history is unusually well preserved, yet whose final silence remains one of the Maya world's most haunting mysteries. This is Dos Pilas. Deep within the Petexbatun region of present-day Guatemala, Dos Pilas rests in a landscape shaped by limestone hills, seasonal swamps, and dense rainforest. Moist air hangs heavily beneath the forest canopy, while shafts of sunlight occasionally break through the leaves to illuminate weathered stone stairways and collapsed temples. From above, the jungle appears almost endless. Only careful excavation reveals the outlines of plazas, palaces, pyramids, and defensive walls hidden beneath centuries of vegetation. Unlike many ancient cities that slowly evolved over hundreds of years, Dos Pilas emerged from political ambition, The city was founded around AD 629 by a prince connected to the powerful kingdom of Tikal, one of the greatest Maya capitals. Historical inscriptions carved into monuments reveal that the founder, Bialaj Chan Kawil, was a member of Tikal's royal dynasty. Yet, rather than remaining a loyal representative, he soon became entangled in one of the most dramatic political struggles of the classic Maya period. Remarkably, much of this story survives not through legend, but through hieroglyphic inscriptions. Stone monuments throughout Dos Pilas preserve detailed records of alliances, betrayals, battles, royal ceremonies, and shifting loyalties. Unlike many archaeological sites where historians must rely almost entirely on artifacts, Dos Pilas speaks through its own written history. Kings recorded their triumphs in carefully carved glyphs, allowing modern epigraphers to reconstruct events with extraordinary precision. Yet, those inscriptions also reveal a darker reality. Far from representing a peaceful ceremonial center, Dos Pilas became the heart of nearly constant warfare. Rival kingdoms competed for influence across the Maya lowlands, forging alliances that shifted from generation to generation. Battles erupted not only between strangers but also between closely related royal families. Political survival depended upon diplomacy, military strength, and sometimes calculated betrayal. One of the most fascinating aspects of Dos Pilas is its elaborate defensive system. As conflict intensified during the 8th century, the inhabitants transformed the surrounding landscape into a formidable network of fortifications. Massive stone walls, deep trenches, narrow gateways, and carefully positioned barriers protected key sections of the city. In some places, natural caves and steep ravines became integrated into the defenses, creating obstacles that invading armies would have struggled to overcome. These fortifications reveal something significant. For much of Maya history, scholars imagined ceremonial cities devoted primarily to astronomy, religion, and peaceful cultural development. Discoveries at Dos Pilas helped reshape that perception. The archaeological evidence demonstrated that warfare could become a defining force in Maya political life. Monumental architecture was not always built simply to honor gods or rulers. Sometimes it reflected the urgent need for survival. The city's location added both strength and vulnerability. Positioned within an important network of rivers, trade routes, and neighboring kingdoms, Dos Pilas occupied valuable territory connecting multiple regions. Control of these routes brought wealth and influence, but it also attracted powerful rivals eager to dominate the same strategic landscape. Eventually, the pressure became overwhelming. Historical records indicate that by approximately AD 760, hostile forces successfully captured Dos Pilas. Although portions of the population may have remained for a short time afterward, large-scale political authority rapidly collapsed. Palaces were abandoned. Ceremonial life faded. The jungle slowly reclaimed plazas that had once hosted royal processions and public ceremonies. Why the city fell remains one of archaeology's enduring questions. Continuous warfare undoubtedly weakened the kingdom, but conflict alone may not explain its final abandonment. Environmental pressures, population stress, political fragmentation, disrupted trade, and prolonged drought have all been proposed as contributing factors. Increasingly, archaeologists believe the collapse resulted not from a single catastrophe, but from multiple crises unfolding simultaneously across the southern Maya lowlands. The caves beneath Dos Pilas introduce another remarkable dimension to the site. Extensive limestone cave systems extend beneath portions of the ancient city, creating hidden chambers filled with underground streams and dramatic rock formations. For the Maya, caves possessed profound spiritual significance. They were viewed as entrances to the underworld, a sacred realm connected with ancestors, gods, creation, and renewal. Excavations within these caves uncovered pottery, ritual offerings, human remains, and evidence of ceremonial activity spanning many generations. Some passages appear to have been deliberately incorporated into the city's sacred geography, linking the visible world above with unseen realms below. What rituals unfolded within these underground chambers? The archaeological evidence suggests processions, offerings, and ceremonies connected with water, fertility, or communication with supernatural beings. Yet, without complete written descriptions of these rituals, much remains open to careful interpretation. The caves preserve evidence of belief, but not the words once spoken within their darkness. Beyond mainstream archaeology, Dos Pilas has inspired more speculative theories. Some independent researchers argue that the city's dramatic rise and rapid collapse reflect broader patterns affecting the entire Maya civilization, patterns still not fully understood. They point to increasingly sophisticated defensive architecture, shifting alliances, and sudden abandonment as signs of complex regional transformations whose full causes remain elusive. Others focus on the caves themselves, suggesting that the placement of temples and ceremonial buildings above underground chambers reflects an advanced symbolic understanding of sacred geography. While archaeologists agree that caves were enormously important within Maya religion, the precise relationship between natural features and urban planning continues to be investigated. Local traditions occasionally speak of hidden chambers beneath the ruins containing untouched offerings or forgotten royal tombs. Such stories have long accompanied many Maya sites. Although no evidence currently confirms these particular legends, large portions of Dos Pilas remain only partially explored. Dense jungle, difficult terrain, and fragile archaeological deposits ensure that new discoveries continue to emerge with each generation of research. Modern technologies have transformed the study of the site. LiDAR scanning, which uses laser pulses to penetrate forest canopies, has revealed previously unknown structures, defensive walls, terraces, and roadways extending far beyond areas visible on the ground. What once appeared to be an isolated ceremonial center increasingly resembles a much larger and more complex urban landscape integrated with surrounding settlements. Environmental studies have also uncovered evidence of changing climate conditions during the city's final centuries. Sediment cores, pollen analysis, and isotopic research suggest periods of severe drought that may have intensified existing political tensions. Yet climate alone cannot explain the remarkable complexity of the collapse. Human decisions, alliances, ambitions, and conflicts all shaped the city's destiny. Today, Dos Pilas remains enveloped by the rainforest. Massive ceiba trees rise where kings once stood. Moss softens carved monuments whose hieroglyphs continue to reveal new details as scholars refine their understanding of the Maya script. The forest has become both protector and guardian, preserving countless structures beneath its roots while concealing others still waiting to be discovered. Standing among these quiet ruins, it becomes impossible not to sense the contrast between past and present. A city once filled with political intrigue, sacred ceremonies, military campaigns, and royal ambition now exists almost entirely in silence. Its temples no longer witness processions. Its plazas no longer echo with voices. Yet, beneath the forest floor, beneath collapsed palaces and hidden caves, countless unanswered questions remain. How many inscriptions have yet to be uncovered? How many forgotten chambers still lie sealed beneath the limestone? And if the jungle continues to protect secrets hidden for more than 1,000 years, what forgotten chapters of the Maya world are still waiting patiently beneath the trees, ready to reshape everything we thought we understood about one of history's most extraordinary civilizations? As the silent temples of Dos Pilas slowly disappear beneath the endless rainforest, our journey leads toward another landscape where history rests just beneath the surface. The dense jungles of Central America give way to the open grasslands and rocky hills of West Africa, where seasonal winds sweep across ancient soils that have guarded remarkable secrets for thousands of years. Here, there are no towering pyramids rising above the horizon, no monumental palaces announcing the presence of forgotten kings. Instead, the mystery begins with faces, carefully shaped from clay, their expressions frozen in time, quietly watching over a civilization whose identity remains one of archaeology's greatest puzzles. This is the Nok Terracotta Site. Scattered across central Nigeria, the Nok archaeological landscape stretches through rolling plateaus, river valleys, and wooded savannas. During the rainy season, green vegetation blankets the hills, while the dry season transforms the landscape into warm shades of gold and red. Beneath this seemingly ordinary terrain lie thousands of ancient artifacts, many hidden for centuries beneath layers of earth. Unlike many famous archaeological sites defined by towering ruins, the Nok culture is known primarily through what survived underground rather than what remained standing above it. The story of Nok first entered the modern world almost by accident. In 1928, tin miners working near the village of Nok uncovered unusual fragments of baked clay, unlike anything they had seen before. These were not simple pottery shards. They belonged to carefully sculpted human and animal figures displaying extraordinary craftsmanship. At first, few realized the significance of the discovery. But as more fragments emerged from the surrounding landscape, archaeologists began to recognize that they represented one of the oldest known sculptural traditions in sub-Saharan Africa. Radiocarbon dating would later reveal an astonishing timeline. The Nok culture flourished between approximately 1500 BC and AD 1, making these sculptures more than 2,000 years old. Some of the earliest examples date even earlier than many scholars had once believed possible for such sophisticated artistic expression in the region. Their discovery transformed understanding of early African history, demonstrating that highly organized communities with remarkable artistic traditions existed long before many written historical records began. The sculptures themselves are unforgettable. Most depict human figures with elongated heads, carefully modeled facial features, elaborate hairstyles, jewelry, and striking geometric patterns. Their eyes are especially distinctive, often formed as large triangular or circular openings that create an almost otherworldly expression. Some figures sit peacefully, others stand confidently, while a few appear engaged in ritual gestures or accompanied by animals. Despite their stylized appearance, the sculptures reveal remarkable attention to detail. Individual hairstyles vary dramatically, suggesting that they reflected real cultural traditions rather than artistic imagination alone. Necklaces, bracelets, belts, and clothing are rendered with precision, offering rare glimpses into a society that left almost no written record. Some figures display signs of illness or physical conditions, including swollen limbs or unusual facial features, leading researchers to believe the artists were careful observers of the people around them. Who were these figures meant to represent? This question remains one of the greatest mysteries surrounding the Nok culture. Some archaeologists believe the sculptures portray respected ancestors whose images played a role in ceremonies honoring family lineages. Others suggest they depict spiritual leaders, important members of society, or mythological beings connected with religious beliefs now lost to history. A few statues combine human and animal characteristics, hinting at symbolic traditions that remain only partially understood. The absence of written language makes definitive answers impossible. Unlike ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, Nok has left no inscriptions explaining its beliefs, rulers, or rituals. Archaeologists must reconstruct the civilization through artifacts, settlement patterns, environmental evidence, and careful comparison with later West African cultures. Every discovery provides another piece of the puzzle, yet much of the larger picture remains incomplete. Excavations have revealed that Nok communities lived in settled villages rather than temporary camps. Archaeological evidence includes domestic pottery, grinding stones, iron smelting furnaces, agricultural tools, and traces of cultivated crops such as pearl millet. Livestock, hunting, and gathering also contributed to daily life, creating a mixed economy well suited to the surrounding savanna environment. One of the most significant discoveries concerns metallurgy. The Nok culture is associated with some of the earliest evidence of iron production in West Africa. Iron tools and smelting furnaces demonstrate considerable technical skill, although scholars continue debating exactly when ironworking first developed within Nok society, and whether it emerged independently or through contact with neighboring regions. If iron technology developed locally, it would represent one of the most remarkable technological achievements of ancient Africa. If introduced through long-distance exchange, it would reveal trade networks extending far beyond what earlier generations of researchers imagined. Current evidence continues to support multiple possibilities, reminding us that many chapters of early African technological history remain unwritten. The settlements themselves raise further questions. Unlike later kingdoms characterized by monumental architecture or centralized capitals, Nok communities appear relatively dispersed across a wide geographic region. This has led some researchers to suggest that society may have consisted of interconnected villages sharing cultural traditions rather than a single unified political state. Others argue that larger ceremonial centers may simply remain undiscovered beneath modern landscapes. One particularly intriguing mystery involves the apparent disappearance of the Nok culture. By around AD 1, the production of terracotta sculptures largely ceased, and many settlements appear to have been abandoned or transformed. Why? Several explanations have been proposed. Environmental changes may have altered farming conditions, encouraging migration into new regions. Population growth could have increased pressure on forests used for charcoal production during iron smelting, gradually affecting local ecosystems. Political and social changes may also have reshaped communities in ways that left fewer recognizable archaeological traces. Yet, none of these theories fully explains the transition. Rather than disappearing entirely, it is possible that Nok traditions evolved into later West African cultures whose connections remain difficult to trace archaeologically. Organic building materials rarely survive in tropical environments, while centuries of erosion, agriculture, and natural processes have erased many ancient settlements from the surface. Beyond mainstream archaeology, the Nok Terracotta Site has inspired numerous speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers argue that the sophistication of the sculptures suggests a civilization considerably more complex than current evidence indicates. They propose that ceremonial centers, administrative structures, or even large urban settlements remain hidden beneath unexplored areas of central Nigeria. While archaeologists acknowledge that many Nok sites have yet to be excavated, direct evidence for large cities has not yet emerged. Others focus on the sculptures' unusual appearance. Their large open eyes, stylized proportions, and calm expressions have led to suggestions that they encoded symbolic or spiritual meanings understood only within Nok society. Some believe the figures represented intermediaries between the human and supernatural worlds. Others interpret them as visual expressions of philosophical ideas concerning ancestry, identity, or the cycle of life and death. Without written explanations, these interpretations remain thoughtful possibilities rather than established conclusions. Modern scientific analysis continues revealing new information. Microscopic examination of clay sources has helped identify where certain sculptures were produced. Chemical studies reveal firing techniques demonstrating remarkable craftsmanship. Radiocarbon dating continues refining the chronology of Nok settlements, while satellite imagery and geophysical surveys identify previously unknown archaeological locations hidden beneath vegetation and farmland. Unfortunately, the Nok legacy has also faced significant challenges. Beginning in the late 20th century, illegal excavation and international trafficking of terracotta sculptures removed countless artifacts from their original archaeological contexts. While many pieces entered museums and private collections around the world, their removal destroyed valuable information about where they were found and how they related to surrounding structures or burials. For archaeologists, context is often as important as the object itself. Despite these losses, systematic excavations continue expanding our understanding of this remarkable culture. Every newly documented site contributes fresh evidence regarding settlement patterns, agriculture, technology, artistic development, and daily life. Increasingly, scholars recognize Nok as one of the foundational civilizations in the history of West Africa rather than an isolated artistic tradition. As the silent terracotta faces of the Nok culture gradually disappear into the red earth of West Africa, our journey moves northward across oceans to a place where the wind carries a different kind of silence. Here, on a cluster of remote islands surrounded by the restless waters of the North Atlantic, ancient builders left behind monuments that have endured for more than 5,000 years. These structures do not dominate the landscape with towering walls or elaborate carvings. Instead, they seem to grow naturally from the hills themselves, blending stone, earth, and sky into a mystery that has never been fully explained. Among them stands one of Orkney's most intriguing prehistoric monuments, the Cuween Hill Chambered Cairn. Rising above the town of Finstown on the Orkney mainland in northern Scotland, Cuween Hill commands sweeping views of rolling farmland, distant lochs, and the shimmering waters that separate the islands from the Scottish mainland. The summit is often wrapped in cool winds drifting in from the Atlantic, carrying the scent of salt and heather across the grassy slopes. At first glance, the hill appears ordinary, its rounded profile blending seamlessly into the surrounding countryside. Only as visitors approach does the entrance reveal itself, a narrow stone passage leading deep into the heart of the mound. Stepping inside feels like crossing an invisible boundary between worlds. The daylight quickly fades behind you, replaced by cool air and the quiet stillness of carefully fitted stone walls. The entrance passage opens into a central chamber, from which 4 small burial cells extend like the points of a cross. Massive slabs of sandstone support the roof above, each carefully placed by hands that worked here more than 5 millennia ago. Despite its age, the structure remains remarkably stable, a testament to the engineering knowledge of its builders. Archaeologists date the cairn to around 3000 BC, placing it firmly within the Neolithic period. It belongs to a remarkable tradition of chambered tombs found throughout Orkney, a region that preserves one of the richest concentrations of prehistoric monuments anywhere in Europe. During this era, farming communities transformed the landscape with villages, ceremonial complexes, standing stones, and elaborate burial monuments whose scale continues to surprise modern researchers. Although often described simply as a tomb, Cuween Hill was almost certainly much more than a place for burial. Excavations have revealed that human remains were deposited inside the chambers over an extended period rather than during a single event. This suggests that the monument served generations of a community, functioning as a place where the living maintained connections with their ancestors. The repeated opening and closing of the chambers implies that rituals unfolded here over centuries, although the details have vanished with the people who performed them. One discovery, however, has puzzled archaeologists for decades. Alongside human bones, excavators uncovered the skulls of at least 24 dogs. The animals had been deliberately placed inside the chamber, and many appeared to belong to a wolf-like breed that no longer exists. Their presence raises one of the site's most enduring mysteries. Why were so many dogs buried here? Several mainstream explanations have been proposed. Some researchers believe dogs held a special ceremonial role within Neolithic society. They may have been valued hunting companions, guardians of settlements, or symbolic guides believed to accompany the dead into the afterlife. In many ancient cultures, canines occupied an important place in mythology, often serving as protectors of sacred thresholds or mediators between life and death. Others suggest the burials reflect acts of devotion or remembrance, with particularly important animals interred alongside respected members of the community. The careful placement of the skulls hints that their inclusion was intentional rather than accidental. Yet certainty remains elusive. No written records survive to explain the beliefs of the people who built Cuween Hill. Archaeologists can identify patterns and compare evidence from other sites, but the symbolic meaning of the dog burials remains open to interpretation. The animals continue to guard their secret in silence. The architecture of the cairn offers additional clues. Its cross-shaped arrangement belongs to a distinctive style known as the Orkney-Cromarty type of chambered cairn. Similar monuments appear across northern Scotland, yet each possesses unique features suggesting local traditions as well as shared cultural knowledge. The builders selected enormous sandstone slabs, transporting and positioning them with extraordinary precision, despite possessing no metal tools or wheeled vehicles. As the quiet chambers of Cuween Hill gradually disappear into the windswept landscape of Orkney, our journey continues south into the Scottish Highlands, where another prehistoric monument waits in remarkable silence. Here, ancient stone circles stand beside carefully constructed burial cairns, surrounded by forests, rivers, and gentle hills that have changed little over thousands of years. Like Cuween Hill, these monuments speak not through written words but through careful design, subtle alignments, and enduring mystery. Together, they form one of prehistoric Britain's most fascinating ceremonial landscapes. This is Clava Cairns. Just east of Inverness, nestled within a peaceful woodland near the River Nairn, the Clava Cairns emerge almost unexpectedly among towering pine trees and carpets of moss. The forest muffles distant sounds, leaving only birdsong, rustling branches, and the occasional whisper of wind passing between ancient stones. Sunlight filters through the canopy in shifting patterns, illuminating weathered boulders that have remained in place for more than 4,000 years. Unlike many archaeological sites dominated by a single monument, Clava Cairns is a carefully arranged complex consisting of multiple burial cairns, standing stones, and stone circles. Although each structure differs slightly, together they reveal an extraordinary level of planning. Massive curbstones encircle the cairns, while larger standing stones form outer rings that frame the monuments against the surrounding landscape. Every stone appears intentionally positioned, creating an atmosphere that feels both ordered and deeply symbolic. Archaeologists date the site to approximately 2000 BC, during the Bronze Age. The cairns belong to a distinctive architectural tradition now known as the Clava type, named after this very location. Similar monuments have been discovered throughout northeastern Scotland, yet the original Clava cairns remain among the finest preserved examples, offering invaluable insight into prehistoric ritual and burial practices. The site contains two principal architectural styles. Passage graves feature narrow stone corridors leading into enclosed burial chambers at their centers. Ring cairns, by contrast, contain open central spaces surrounded by circular stone structures but without accessible chambers. The coexistence of these two forms within a single ceremonial landscape has intrigued archaeologists for generations. Why were different designs constructed side by side? Did each serve a separate ritual purpose? Were they built by different communities across successive generations? Or did they represent complementary elements within a shared religious tradition? The archaeological evidence offers clues, but few definitive answers. Excavations indicate that cremated human remains were deposited within some of the cairns, suggesting that they served as burial monuments. Yet, the relatively small number of individuals represented raises important questions. These were unlikely to have been ordinary cemeteries used by entire communities. Instead, they may have honored selected individuals whose status held particular significance, perhaps respected leaders, spiritual figures, or ancestral lineages remembered across generations. The careful craftsmanship visible throughout Clava Cairns reveals extraordinary attention to detail. Builders selected stones of varying sizes and colors with apparent purpose. In some cairns, reddish sandstone appears concentrated on one side, while lighter stones dominate another. Whether these choices reflected symbolic beliefs, aesthetic preferences, or practical considerations remains uncertain. Nevertheless, the consistency of these patterns suggests they were unlikely to have been accidental. Perhaps the most remarkable feature of Clava Cairns is its relationship with the sky. Several passage graves are aligned toward the southwest, where the setting sun reaches its lowest point during the winter solstice. Around this time of year, sunlight enters the narrow passages and briefly illuminates the innermost chambers. Such alignments demonstrate careful astronomical observation and imply that seasonal cycles played an important role in the ceremonies associated with these monuments. For prehistoric farming communities, the winter solstice carried profound significance. It marked the longest night of the year, after which daylight gradually returned. Across many ancient cultures, this turning point symbolized renewal, continuity, and the promise of another growing season. Within the dark interior of a burial chamber, a single beam of sunlight may have represented far more than a natural phenomenon. It may have embodied ideas concerning death, rebirth, memory, or the enduring relationship between the living and the ancestors. As we follow this endless trail of forgotten civilizations and unanswered questions, another remarkable site begins to emerge from the shadows. Once again, the landscape itself seems to guard a secret that refuses to fit neatly into history. Deep within the lush volcanic foothills of Central America lies a place where two great civilizations appear to meet, overlap, and quietly exchange ideas. Few archaeological sites blur the boundaries of the ancient world as profoundly as Takalik Abaj. Hidden among dense forests and fertile plantations in the Pacific lowlands of present-day Guatemala, Takalik Abaj rests beneath towering ceiba trees and layers of rich volcanic soil. Morning mist drifts through the forest, softening the outlines of ancient stone monuments that have stood in silence for more than 2,000 years. Birds call from the canopy overhead, while roots slowly weave around weathered sculptures whose meanings have become increasingly difficult to decipher. Time has not erased this place. It has carefully concealed it. Unlike many ancient cities dominated by a single culture, Takalik Abaj presents archaeologists with an extraordinary puzzle. The site flourished for well over 1,000 years, beginning around 1000 BC and continuing into the early Classic period. During that immense span of time, its architecture, monuments, and artistic traditions gradually changed, preserving evidence of one of the most fascinating cultural transitions in ancient Mesoamerica. Early in its history, Takalik Abaj displays unmistakable influences associated with the Olmec civilization. Massive stone sculptures, rounded facial features, and ceremonial monuments resemble artistic traditions found hundreds of kilometers away along the Gulf Coast. Yet, as centuries passed, new forms emerged. Hieroglyphic inscriptions, Maya-style pyramids, carved stelae, and sophisticated ceremonial architecture gradually became dominant. It is almost as though two civilizations left their signatures on the same city. This remarkable transformation has made Takalik Abaj one of the most important archaeological sites for understanding the relationship between the Olmec and the ancient Maya. Rather than replacing one another suddenly, the evidence suggests a long period of interaction, adaptation, and cultural blending. How exactly that transition unfolded remains uncertain. Did Olmec craftsmen settle here and influence local communities? Did merchants carry artistic and religious traditions across vast trade routes? Or did local societies selectively adopt new ideas while preserving older customs? The archaeological record supports elements of each possibility, but no single explanation accounts for every discovery. Trade, almost certainly, played a crucial role. Takalik Abaj occupied a strategic position connecting the Pacific coast with the highlands and interior regions of Mesoamerica. Valuable goods, such as jade, obsidian, cacao, feathers, ceramics, and marine shells likely passed through its markets. Such exchange brought more than material wealth. It carried beliefs, technologies, artistic styles, and political ideas across enormous distances. Excavations have revealed carefully planned plazas, ceremonial platforms, drainage systems, and monumental sculptures carved from enormous basalt boulders. Several stelae preserve some of the earliest known examples of Maya hieroglyphic writing and calendar dates, suggesting that Takalik Abaj participated in the emergence of traditions that would later define the classic Maya world. One particularly important discovery involved an elaborate royal burial containing jade ornaments, finely crafted ceramics, and ceremonial offerings. Archaeologists believe the tomb belonged to an early ruler whose authority reflected increasingly complex political organization. Yet, even this remarkable discovery raises new questions rather than resolving old ones. Who governed Takalik Abaj during its earliest centuries? Did leadership pass peacefully between changing cultural traditions, or did political struggles accompany the transformation visible in the monuments? The surviving evidence remains incomplete. The site's monumental sculptures deepen the mystery even further. Some depict rulers standing confidently beside elaborate symbols of authority. Others portray supernatural beings whose identities remain uncertain. Several monuments appear unfinished or deliberately altered, suggesting that changing beliefs may have reshaped the city's ceremonial landscape over time. Astronomical planning may also have influenced the city's design.